You're listening to the Harbor Light Show, a podcast that discusses how people make sense of and assign meaning to their experiences. My name is Dr. Kenneth Erickson, and I hold a doctorate in the field of health psychology. In addition, I'm a practicing chiropractor, a martial artist, and a seeker of truth and authenticity. Join me, along with other fellow travelers, as we discuss the lessons they've learned in their travels and the impact those lessons have had on their lives. Program, man.
Alphabet soup.
Learn the note. Oh boy, this ought to be a good one. This ought to be a good one. Am I live? Okay, all right, we're live.
What that out?
As Chris Rock said, that grand opening and grand closing. So this might be.
Well, you asked.
Yeah, I did. Wow, I don't know what I was thinking. So we've got my good buddy Ray McCotch with us tonight, and we're going to see how this goes. But so let's just kind of go over how you and I met.
Okay. I was training traditional karate, martial arts, and unfortunately, it happens a lot in martial arts, you've come to a point where you either get burnt out teaching and you have a impasse with your current instructor, and we had a mutual, I don't want to call him client, student, Mark Jenko, and you had a private club at the time, and the only way you could join your club is if someone brought you, and Mark brought me, and that was the first step, but you also had to be accepted by the group that was there. It wasn't just like, oh, Mark said you can come in. My very first class, I separated my shoulder.
Who were you grappling?
Terry Gray.
The guy that was on my last podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
He was close to 300 pounds. He wouldn't admit it, but he's 300 pounds. And we were doing a choke. And I was supposed to be pulling him in, and I was trying to push him off. And it popped. The whole class heard my shoulder pop. And you were kind of a hard-nosed instructor back then and walked over and just looked down at me and said, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
And then, well, that was 22 years ago.
22 years ago.
Yeah, I started training with you when I was 40, and I'm 62 now.
22 years ago. Now, tell me more about your background. Like, I know you had extensive training. I mean, you had a black belt, and you had competed, and you had done a lot.
Yeah, I always got interested in martial arts, but never did it. And then I was going through a tough time in my life. I was getting divorced, and I just said, the heck with it. I'm going to start doing things I want to do. Mm-hmm. So at the time with my work schedule, I couldn't go to group classes, so I started private lessons with a local martial artist. And then I was going train for 3, 4. Well, once I was able to get into group classes, I was training 3 to 4 times a week for almost 8 years solid to get my black belt.
Wow.
Competed. They call it internationally because it was Canada was involved. I didn't travel outside the States, but go to Canada. My highlight of my sparring career, it's a point sparring career, was beating Canada's national champion. I think his name was Danny Griffith. He was kicking my butt. He really was. I came back, tied it up with 15 seconds left. And then he stepped out of the, oh, I'm sorry. I came within 1 point and there's 15 seconds left because I hurt him. When I was sparring, I was able to always, seems like 90% of the time, land a good body shot, which would take a lot of gas out of people.
So when you're sparring in point tournaments, because I've never done anything like that,
right?
How hard can you hit, or how hard do they know that you're hitting?
You can hit the body as hard as you want, pretty much. It's the head contact they kind of.
Okay.
But you can still get hit pretty hard.
Okay.
I mean, some tournaments they won't let you hit the face at all.
But the body.
Body.
Okay.
In Ohio, they even have groin shots, which is a real whole different aspect to your sparring.
Right.
Which, seriously, if you're not used to practicing kicking someone in the groin in a sport competition, and then you go to some state like Ohio where it's acceptable,
Wow.
it's a whole,
Oh, yeah.
it can be an awakening experience.
Yeah, to say the least. So then you did all that, you trained, and how long had you been training by the time you came to my school?
8 years.
8 years. So had you just gotten your black belt?
Maybe a year before.
Oh, okay.
Well, I competed as a black belt for probably almost 3 years before I actually got awarded my black belt.
You were in that division.
Yeah.
Okay.
I competed as a black belt for at least 3 years, even though I was just like a brown belt.
So the first class you came down, you hurt your shoulder. Then how long?
I was out, I think minimum was 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
And then you come back.
Come back. I'm sitting there, we're stretching, and you walked around and you said I could stay. And then,
You know, that happened because I used to have an open policy, like anybody and anybody could come in at one point, early on. And I got everybody, I mean, every tough guy in the world, and everybody wanted to kick my ass all the time. And, you know, guys that just got out of prison and other guys, and some guys were criminals, literally, and they wanted to learn it to.
sure.
But I took on anybody. I'd never turned down anybody. But eventually I got to a point where I'm like, man, why would I want to put up with all this crap? If you're not a decent person, I don't even want you there.
Well, the difference is most martial arts schools do that because they're in business to make money.
Right.
You weren't doing it to make money, so you were able to limit your clientele,
That's
so to
true.
speak, students, because the money was not an issue because
That's right.
it was a heck of a deal. I always said to those guys down there that you guys don't realize what you're getting for the little bit of money that you charged.
No, and I don't think most of them ever did really get that because I used to have a hell of a time getting that little bit of money out of them.
Yeah.
I'd have to chase them around.
But I think that's because a lot of them didn't have any prior training other
they
than
had no idea.
No.
They didn't know.
They've been out there. I mean, you go to different schools like we did. We traveled a lot of different schools. We trained with different schools. We'd go over to Erie just to train with them and get exposed. And they just didn't have any idea.
No, they didn't. That's really true. So after you started training, now at some point you and I started doing privates.
Yeah, my work schedule changed. I couldn't make the group class. So the only time we could train was at like 6 a.m. Because you always said if you really wanted to, you can make time for it.
Right.
And so 6 o'clock in the morning we would meet. And I remember my first private lesson, I felt like I didn't know how to break fall properly. And that I spent 45 minutes throwing myself on the mat, which was quite the workout.
Yeah.
And you
just that.
critiqued it.
Right.
Because, you down and up, and, but it was beneficial. I thought it was a weakness at my point, because the previous school, they just started dabbling into grappling. They didn't know what they were doing, but no one knew they didn't know what they were doing until I came to your school, and I realized I was just blown away, and it was
Well, we did a lot other training too besides just the grappling too.
right. I should back up. Our very first private lesson, we had to find out what we were about. Remember?
No, I don't have any recollection of that at all.
Well, you wanted to know what I knew and how I would handle myself standing up, and we were throwing jabs and punches at each other, and we talked about what I would do with the sport, and then you closed the gap and took me down, and showed me that I didn't really know much.
Well,
on the ground, if I felt comfortable if I was standing up.
Right.
When I came to you, and then I tell this to everybody, I felt real comfortable if I had room to move to fight somebody.
Right.
But you taught me how to fight inside a phone booth.
Yeah, close up.
Yes.
What happens if you don't have that distance?
To move.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't circle.
And you got to practice.
What do you do when you're this close?
Protect yourself, too. Not only just how to harm someone.
Right.
But
how to not get harmed.
Yes, first don't lose.
Yeah, right. Well, that was the thing I got from Jay because Jay, I'd always say to Jay, years ago, well, I want to kick somebody's ass, and how do I? He's like, well, you're not kicking anybody's ass if you're getting your ass kicked.
Right.
You got to first don't lose,
Right.
don't be getting beat up here. But that applies to everything. How many guys want to become, how do I make money? Well, stop losing money.
Right.
your spending habits are so bad that you just keep spending no matter what you make.
Right.
You know, and I think that's a true statement about pretty much every aspect of life. So you and I started training, and I'm trying to think back now. The training in those days, in the early going, was pretty rough,
Intense.
pretty intense.
I was in pretty good shape. Like I said, I just spent 8 years training 3 and 4 times a week.
Right.
I thought I was in pretty good shape for being 40. And your warm-ups were an hour and a half long. And I would
Right.
go to work the next day exhausted because the class in general was 3 hours long, minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And the first half was very strenuous workouts.
Drills, right.
Yes, drills, practice. I'm trying to remember how you used to put yourself in a position you don't want to be in.
Yeah, that was a big part of the training, was starting in a bad position all
Yeah.
the time, right? Not good position.
Right.
Like the worst possible
Yes.
position. Now what?
Yeah.
Now work out of there.
Work out of it.
Yeah. That was all because of my early training with like Steve Yant and even Rodrigo Vaghi a little bit. But, the idea that you practice in dominant positions and you practice in things you feel comfortable with, and it gives you a false sense of security. What happens if you end up in that bad spot and you've never been there? You've never trained it.
Right.
It's going to be a problem for you.
Well, first, panic's going to set in.
Panic will set
You
in.
got to be relaxed.
Right.
That was one of the most things I treasure from all those years of training with you, is that, and you would put people in place where,
They didn't like
force them to learn how to relax.
Yep.
You put them in situations. I can remember a lot of times where I thought, oh, good, I survived. And you go, oh, another minute. And I was like, oh my gosh. And the thought would come into my, just relax.
Right.
You've made it this far.
Right.
Another 60 seconds.
Won't matter. Right. Well, that's trying to get people, I read somewhere that they do it with like Navy SEAL training or Special Forces training, where they take a guy and they'll have him running, and right to where they think they can't run anymore, the truck will speed away and up around, and they're like, they have no idea,
Right.
but it's just up around the corner.
Right. It's another 100 yards or 50 feet even.
Whatever it is, right?
Right.
And being able to push through those mental barriers, to be able to do that. That was a big part of how I taught, was trying to take people right to their limits and then just put them a little bit beyond their limits. Take
Right.
them a little bit further than they thought they
And
could.
it tests their character too, because some people at that point can
Give up.
quit.
Yes.
Or,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
learn to relax, focus on what you got to
Yep.
do.
I always said that, your true character will come out on that mat, because I don't really believe this idea that, well, adversity builds character and all this. No, I think it reveals character. Like, if you're a kind of a cheap shot, cheater kind of guy, when those people get pressured, they don't suddenly find their integrity and their toughness. They do what they do, which is basically they try to worm their way out of whatever it is.
Right. Or fake an
Or
injury.
fake an injury, or we saw that a lot.
Yeah.
And how many times how many guys over the years suddenly had
Scheduling conflict,
their jobs got changed suddenly, or
but didn't stop me.
no.
Because like you always said, if you really want to
You
be
will-
here,
yes.
you will find the time, you will make the time. And you were the type of instructor that would also make the time. You didn't have to get up at be there at 6 o'clock. I mean, we started at 6 o'clock, so that meant you had to be up at least an hour before or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that was was well appreciated, because it's a two-way street.
It's kind of funny too that, see, you have a different take on it, I think, because of all the training you had done prior. A lot of the guys had never really trained anywhere else, just
Right.
with me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they had kind of a fantasy in their minds about what it would be like to train with the big name guys. Well, I trained with big name guys.
Right.
And man, to get them to teach you anything was hard sometimes. They didn't want to show you nothing. I was pretty much an open book. I never held back. Once I felt like you were able to understand it. I did hold back early. Do you remember early you basically had to get your ass kicked for like 3 months or so.
A lot of people wouldn't come back after first class.
They're even first class. And because my attitude was, no one has enough money to buy me. No one paid me enough for me to teach them. I had to like you and want to teach you and feel like there was a relationship. So for me, it wasn't just because you showed up with some money and said, I'm here to learn.
Right.
I'm like,
There
no,
were
and
so
even
many-
after you show up, I'm not going to teach you till you show really
Right.
that you're willing to put the work in and the effort in, and it's hard. It's not an easy. It was hard. It's hard, real hard, really hard.
Well, most of the kids, most of the guys, I don't want to call them kids, but most of the people in the class at that time are half my age.
Right,
I'm 40 years old going against 20,
right,
young 20, mid 20s.
Yeah.
I mean, physically fit, most of them.
yeah.
And they've been training with you for
Yeah.
a while, so they had the skills. And yeah, you talk about getting your butt whooped for 3 months. It went on longer than
Well,
that.
I'm just saying before I would be comfortable
Yeah,
to
show-
show you,
yes.
like I just go. You know, one of the reasons was I wanted people to be convinced it was real. I didn't want them thinking. See, the problem in martial arts a lot is if you show a counter to something, they automatically think they can counter it. They
Right.
think they can. Well, now that I see the counter, that's
That the technique's no good.
yeah, and I'm like, well,
No.
one, I'm showing you what I'm doing. I'm showing you how. In the real deal, you won't be able to pull that off like you think you. And so I never wanted anyone to doubt the legitimacy of it. I want them to realize it was real, you know.
Right.
And then the other thing though was I got to be kind of known as a grappler, but the truth was, grappling was just one aspect. I was just as interested in stand up and all of the rest of it.
That was the one thing that always impressed me in that very first class, your hand speed for your size. Because I had been in a lot of sport competition with, younger kids, guys. I keep on calling them kids, but I'm fighting 20-year-olds in this
Yeah.
division as well.
Yeah.
And they're fast and they're strong, man. I remember one match I got kicked in the head 3 times. I didn't even know what he hit me with. But then I knocked the wind out of him. Body shot.
And that was it.
And he was a little more
Tiny would say. He got more respectful. at that point.
respectful, yeah.
So let's talk about Tiny for a little bit.
Okay.
So Tiny's a guy that I don't remember. Now you had been there for a while with me, I think, before Tiny started coming.
Yes.
Yeah. Now Tiny was a guy I knew as a kid. I knew him when I was just really young, and I knew he was a martial arts guy. But I was all about weightlifting. You know what I mean? He would slap me around occasionally, show me something. You remember that whole thing? I'll show you something.
Let me show you something.
Right. But I never really. I should have probably, tried to learn from him early on, but I just got tired of getting slapped around. It was like, and I didn't, but I knew him. I knew him for a long time, and then I came back, and I didn't realize that Brian Barone had ever trained with Tiny. I had no idea. Brian was a weightlifter guy from back in the days in the weight room, but I didn't know he trained with Tiny at all. I was kind of like, really? Are we talking about the same guy? Yeah, Brian. So Brian and I got together, and Brian was so blown away that he went to Tiny and goes, you have got to see this. Like, you're not going to believe this.
All right.
So Tiny eventually wanted to come down and train with me, but I was concerned because you know how he was.
Yeah.
That guy was a hardcore dude, like beyond
There
hardcore.
was no slow speed.
No
with him.
slow, and everything was a fight.
Yep.
And he was there to dominate and to show you
Prove something.
you're not going to get nothing on him, ever.
Right.
Were you there the night when I broke his neck?
Yes.
Yeah. So, that was one of those things where I was concerned for two reasons. One, I didn't want to get hurt, and, that dude could hurt you. And I didn't want to hurt him either. But in grappling, you get into a hold, you know how it is. You got to
Right.
tap. You have to tap.
Tap or something's going
Or
to give.
something's, yeah, as they say, tap or snap kind of thing. And Tiny had just no respect for it.
Right.
None. Well, you couldn't get me in that. I could get out of that. He'd say it all the time.
Right.
I'm like, you can't get out of it. And then that one night, I got him in that shoulder lock, and
Crack.
he tried to he tried to grab me in the groin.
You grabbed your inner thigh, didn't
Thank God.
he? Yeah.
And
Good.
he wouldn't let go.
No.
And he just kept. He was trying to really, and it was hurt. I mean, and I warned him a couple times.
Yep.
And he wouldn't. He just wouldn't let it go. So I shifted my weight out and broke his elbow. It was a spiral fracture through his elbow. And then he screamed, and but then he finally got it. At that point, he was like, "Yo, this is bad. This stuff's bad, right?" I'm like, "Well, why should I have to break your elbow for you to understand that?" But that's how he was wired, that guy.
Right. You had to prove it to him. You had to feel it, like he used to say. You got to feel it to experience
He was not interested. Now, when I train now, I don't do so much like when I train like with Chris up in Rochester. I'm not there to show let him feel what I'm capable of really
Right.
putting out. I'm more just let's train technique and see. You know what I mean? But there's still that attitude out there of I'm going to let you feel it, and I get that because there's nothing like really feeling it to convince yourself of it. But the other thing was, it's easy to be a badass when nobody's contesting you, when no one's fighting back.
Right. When it's one-stepping.
Yeah, we always call it one-stepping, right? And the instructor's beating the crap out of the students. And, in the real fighting world, what I call the real fighting world, I mean, the real serious guys, they have no respect for it at all because, listen, you can pull that off on that guy standing there letting you do it to you. Do it to me when I'm not going to just stand there and I'm going to be giving you as good as you got or better. I mean, Chris and I were talking a little earlier about Fred Mastro, this guy who, I looked at him and I thought, he's another typical Hollywood kind of guy to me. Very flashy, very cool, but they speak in these hushed tones like he's so bad that nobody would even dare. Well, to me,
Right.
dude, I've been with some of the toughest guys in the world. That doesn't mean nothing to me. And there's been several pro fighters that I know of and spoken to who have no respect for Fred. They're like, this is a joke. You're not going to pull. Guys don't just fall over because you hit,
Right.
But Chris is convinced. He's trained with him, and he's convinced. He says, I felt what he can do, and he says he's put guys in the hospital. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I could put guys in the hospital. Let me punch you one time in the throat. You'll be in the hospital. Or let me kick your knee in, and you don't do it. So, I'm not quite as enamored, but I respect Chris, and I respect his opinion. So I'm willing to say he's got something to offer, but I know why the fighters look at him and go,
Yeah,
we're
but
not impressed.
putting someone in the hospital, that doesn't really
No. Well,
doesn't
anybody can
earn respect from my point of view. I mean, you have to trust the person you're training with. Remember?
Right.
And if you can't train with people if you're constantly hurt. So how do you better yourself, or how is it beneficial to them?
No, I don't think and maybe that wasn't a training thing. Maybe it wasn't a real street fight, whatever. But the other thing is, street fighting's another conversation where you could take a guy who's a really highly trained fighter, MMA fighter, black belt, Brazilian, you put him up against some insane, violent person in the street. They're not guaranteed to walk away from that unscathed.
Oh, no.
That crazy guy who may have been in 1,000 street fights, you don't know what he might do. He might have a weapon.
You could bite your face off.
He could bite your face off, absolutely.
I mean,
and
you
don't know.
You just don't know.
Right. So I get that. And I always say, you get a $10 carpet knife from Home Depot, and I can take your best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and probably dice them up I don't even have to have training to do that.
Right.
So I get all of that, but there's always been this idea that, well, those guys train for sport and he trains for the street. I'm like, really? Well, if you think any of these top MMA guys couldn't fight this, these guys are professional fighters. They're
you don't know what their background is. They could have came from the street and ended up in the gym.
Exactly.
You don't know that.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Khabib is that way. Khabib, I can't ever say his name properly. Nurmagomedov or whatever it is. That dude, he grew up in Russia. Rough place, man. I know he's had tons of street fights. Goker's another guy.
No.
Tons of street fights. Did he go on to do the sport? Yeah. But, I tell people all the time, if you want to find out how tough you're not, you just go to North Hollywood and find some Armenians, and you'll find out real quick how tough you're not, because those guys, and they will be more than happy to oblige you.
Yes.
There won't be any problem, whether it be Fred or anybody else. Well, it doesn't matter who you are. Those guys will, because they're the real deal for sure. So, martial arts is a kind of I have a lot of conflicted feelings about it. I think, as an example, the other side of that coin is sports jiu-jitsu. When I was learning jiu-jitsu, I started in '93 with Steve Yant. Steve Yant was Rickson Gracie's representative at the time. He'd already been training 2 or 3 years with Rickson. And there was really no sports jiu-jitsu at that time. It was all self-defense, how do you survive in the street kind of a thing. The moves all had to be basic. There wasn't anything that required you to have incredible superhuman flexibility, or, it had to be essentially a very normal movement for the body. It had to be efficient. It shouldn't rely so much on strength and effort. And it was all about survival. It was all about surviving a real attack. Well, now it's sports jiu-jitsu. You've got weight classes.
Yep.
You don't have one guy who's 300 against a guy with a 150-pound guy. And there's no striking, there's no punching, there's no kicking, nothing. So you can do all kinds of things that you can't do when you're dealing with that. Also, it's always on a mat. It's always on a padded mat. You know, I taught a seminar a couple of years ago in Houston, Texas, and I said, why don't we go out in the parking lot and do this in the parking lot today? It's 100 and some degrees there.
Right.
How long do you think you could pull off grappling on blacktop when it's, I mean, or any hard, like, it's going to change everything. Even like a lot of the takedowns you see wrestlers use, where they drive forward and their knee hits that mat and they come forward. You did that on cement or blacktop, you'd shatter your leg. So there's big differences in fighting, the way you want to view it. But to me, the guys who compete, I always have a lot of respect, whether it be in sport or not, because you're going up against somebody who does not want to cooperate with you. They're not allowing you to do this.
And the preparation.
All the preparation.
I mean, the training.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have come to a title fight or not, and the guy got hurt during training?
Yep.
You can't make the fight.
Right.
How disappointing is that?
Imagine that.
And
All
not
that
just
work.
mentally.
Yeah, it's all true.
Mentally. And then if you get injured in the fight,
Right,
coming back from that
right.
in any sport.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, I've had so many injuries, and so that was my big problem when I met Goat. By the time I met him, I was never healthy, really. I always had this injury, that injury.
Right.
The first year he came here to teach a seminar, I tore my left quad off. I paid for it, you and I, and lost a bunch of money on it, but I couldn't even train because my leg was in a cast.
Right.
So I've had to come back from multiple injuries and that's the other thing too is, you know, I don't really look, there's fighting, then there's fighting. Like you talk about sports tournament type stuff. I don't really think that's a fight personally. I don't see that as a fight. I mean, you pass some guy's guard, you pinned him down and you won the, okay,
Right.
That's fine. There's athleticism, there's technique, but that's not a fight. Then you've got MMA fights where there's punching and there's kicking, and that's a fight, right? But there's a ref.
There's rules.
There's rules. You can stop it anytime you want. Then you got the nasty fights in the streets where you don't know what that guy might do. Weapons are involved. That changes the game immediately.
Right.
There's no refs necessarily.
And there's no guarantee he's going to stop.
And there's no guarantees by himself.
Yeah.
You might end up against 3 of his buddies, too.
True.
So there's that fight. But then, to me, the real fight in life is when you get the diagnosis. You've got cancer, you've got heart problems. Even worse than that, your kid has that. Now you're in a fight.
Yeah.
You don't get to just say, you know what, I've had enough and I think I'm done. And
Yeah.
there is no stopping that. And I don't care who you are, the baddest dude in the world, you get the diagnosis and you'll be weak as a puppy. You can go from being King Kong to a puppy in a matter of a day. I mean, it's, you know, I've lived it, I've experienced it and been through it. So that's another fight to me. That for me is the real fight in life.
Yes.
So I don't really see even the MMA guys. I mean, when you're young and you're strong and you're in the peak of your physical ability, that's not necessarily a hardcore fight in my mind. The world will give you, life will give you a fight eventually, though. It's coming for everybody, I think. Then we'll really find out what you're made of. Because if you're real strong and a badass, you know, you use that as a way, as kind of a coping mechanism, right? So, but all of a sudden, when you feel helpless and there's nothing you can do, I can't imagine anything worse than having a child sick.
No.
I don't even want to think about
It's a parent's worst nightmare.
Worst nightmare.
My parents were never the same after my brother passed.
Right.
Just him being diagnosed with the cancer was devastating.
Wasn't
And they
ever
have
the same.
false hope, thinking there's going to be some cure, and
And there wasn't.
no.
Right. Yeah. So that's where I'm at in my life. So I see a lot of these guys and, oh, this guy's so tough, and this guy, I'm like, yeah, really? Is he really tough?
In certain aspects.
It depends on how you look. And the other thing is, we talked about this a lot. You can't know about somebody's heart and how tough they really are based on their win-loss record. Because if you are super dominant, and you can point to, say, like Ronda Rousey's an example, right? So she's coming out kicking everybody's ass. Nobody can deal with her until she runs into Holly Holmes. and Holly Holmes kicks her ass, right? Mm-hmm. Well, now what? Are you tough? Are you resilient?
You got game.
You got game? Yeah, you got that? You can't know that till you're pushed. I've always respected the guys who they're as gracious in their losing as they are in their winning. You know, they're not fazed by it. It isn't like, oh, what am I going to do? No, I'll get back into the gym. I'll be back. Mm-hmm. And they do. They come back, and some of them are even tougher than they were before. Other people, once they have one loss, they're never the same. They never can come back from it mentally. Well, man, if you can't deal with that, like in a sports, what are you going to deal with life when you really suffer a loss?
Right.
You know? So I look at all these things differently than I used to years ago, but I'm not too impressed with the guy. Anybody who's supposed to be so scary and so tough, really? You got something I'm not seeing here? As far as I can tell, you got 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head.
Just a human
What are
being.
you going to do? You're just a human being, you know? And when you've dealt with some really super tough guys, I'm not that easily impressed anymore.
And they're still human. The people that you know and that you're talking about, you've seen other sides of them where you know
Yeah.
the certain vulnerabilities there.
No doubt about it.
You know,
No
but
question about it.
their persona in the public is one
Right.
thing.
They're untouchable, but then you get to really know them. They've got vulnerabilities too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no
I
question.
mean, who doesn't?
Everybody does.
I mean-
There's nobody who doesn't. I mean, that's the thing. That's why I've always respected like Fedor Emelianenko, because he is so under control, even when he loses. I've always admired the guy. He gives the appearance, anyways,
Right.
that he's very under control. You know, he's very control of his emotions, which I think is great. I mean, that's really something. But yeah, martial arts, you've got the physical side of it, and you've got the what really works in a real fight, which was the only thing I was ever interested in. I wasn't interested in some fantasy nonsense where you just crack the guy and he falls over. I'm like, why isn't this happening in thousands of actual fights? Why don't you ever see that? I don't care if you're talking MMA fights on TV or you're talking YouTube fights where they film guys scrapping in the streets. Why can't anybody pull these things off that these guys are supposedly doing, where one kick and his legs go flying and he's out cold? It just doesn't happen, man. I mean, you can get knocked out. You can get a clean shot and get yourself knocked out, but
Yeah, but even we've had this discussion during the MMA fights when we used to watch them on TV. Mm-hmm. Black belt in whatever style, black belt in the. But when it comes into the ring, they're not using that style.
right. Yeah, don't you find that interesting?
There's only been a couple that did, but then they also had to adjust. Was it Machida?
Yeah.
He stuck. That's
He-
what.
He did.
He stuck to his traditional karate
but he
style.
had to alternate. He had to alter it a little bit.
Yeah, you had to. You have to
So
learn a
did,
ground game.
So did the other guy, Wonder Boy, Stephen. What the hell's his name? Thompson or something. Wonder Boy. He's another guy.
Right.
He's a traditional karate.
Right, but they knew enough that they had to adjust
You have to adjust, right?
because you can't go through that falsehood that they'll never take me down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's being with the background with the.
Right.
There's so many martial arts styles out there
Yeah.
that have that mentality
Yeah.
that you'll never take me down to the ground.
Well, and the opposite's true too. You get around hardcore grapplers, and they have this. They're almost as blinded, thinking, "Well, I'll just take you down, and
Right,
I can't be hit or kicked, and then next thing you know, they get
knocked out trying to take you down.
They get knocked out. So
Yeah.
you better respect. You know, I've always said, just because a technique doesn't work for me, doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't work, right? I've seen guys, and you've seen guys, and you've done it, I'm sure, that can kick so hard and so fast and kick you in the head, you don't even know what happened. I knew immediately when I got involved with it, that was never going to be my thing.
Right,
I wasn't built for it, really. And what was the best I could hope for? To be kind of a half-ass kicker, like. So I knew that wasn't to say somebody couldn't make it work.
oh yeah,
They can make it work.
Look at Superfoot Wallace
Bill Wall-
back in the day,
Yeah,
man. I mean, his foot speed was incredible.
Crazy,
No
right.
one had ever seen anything like that.
Well, you remember when Tiny met him at the Martial Arts Hall of Fame? Did you hear that story?
Maybe,
So he's there. I took him out there.
right,
Remember, we got him in and
right.
everything.
You got him in the.
Got him in the Martial Arts Hall of Fame. Take him out there to Nashville, and he's there. Bill Wallace is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a seminar that he's teaching Well, Tiny's daughter was there. Both daughters. One I went to school with and the other I didn't. Well, Bill apparently kind of took a liking to her and was kind of hitting on her. And I don't know, he did something. He did something, and Tiny gave him a look, like one of those looks, you know what I mean?
The cold steel, blue-eyed
Yes,
look. Like,
and he decided not to
pursue that. Wise man.
Wise man. Because that was the thing about Tiny, too. I mean, he respected people, but he would never back down from anybody. He wasn't the type of person that you weren't going to just intimidate him, and you'd have to prove it to him.
Yeah, and you and him are a lot alike because you had the private school, and Tiny didn't just teach anybody.
No, Tiny, he only had a handful of students.
Yeah,
actually.
exactly. I mean,
Tiny
I wouldn't
only had-
even know how to approach him to learn how to teach or to be taught by him.
Well,
And the only reason I know what I know from him is,
because he trained at our school.
yes.
Right. No, Tiny was the kind of guy that to get him to train you was pretty tough, and he only had a handful of real students.
Right.
And, you know, the difference, I was his last student, really, his last real student.
Mm-hmm.
The difference was I wasn't trying to be Tiny.
Oh, no.
Every other student I think he ever had tried to become Tiny.
Yes.
Right? And I knew pretty quick I didn't want to be a half-assed version of Tiny. I didn't have his physicality. I didn't have what he had.
Right.
But I had a different set of skills that he didn't have. So once he was convinced they were real, then he would start to look at it and go, he'd say, I do that. I do that same thing, Stanton. I said, well, show me. I said, well, it's very similar, right? But then we would compare notes and say, well, but the thing is, when you go to the ground, this is going to change that a little bit, but essentially, yeah, I get what you're doing. And then there were certain things that I just didn't like. Certain things he did, I just wouldn't do.
Right.
Not to say that he couldn't pull it off. In fact, one time I said to him, I said, Tiny, suppose somebody trains with you and trains in your style, and we were on a road trip together, and I said, and say they get in a fight, they get in a street fight, and they get their ass kicked. What do you say about that? And he looks at me and goes, well, maybe they weren't me. Right?
Well, I ain't no goat.
Yeah, right. That's a funny story, too. So that story has to do with, what the hell was that guy's name? Guy Savelli. Guy Savelli, who I've never met. And he had trained apparently with readers, which is where, right?
They made a movie about it.
Men staring at goats.
Yeah.
And the story that I heard was he came up to see Tiny with one of his students. And his student said to Tiny, I think, you know, if Master Savelli wants to give you a heart attack, he can just look at you. He can kill a goat at 100 yards by staring at him. Tiny looked at him and went, yeah, well, I ain't no goat, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're not doing that on me. Well, that was something I admired about Tiny because he just didn't give in he wasn't going to be intimidated by anybody. Anybody.
He'd want to see you drop that goat.
Show it, and now
Show
do it to
me.
me.
Yeah.
Now do it. How do I know you didn't poison the goat?
Yeah. Whatever.
Now you do it to me.
Yeah.
That's how he was.
That's how he was.
Oh, probably. Now, I've been asked a lot over the years, who's the toughest guy you've ever met? Who's the toughest guy ever trained? That's a hard question in a lot of ways, but I would say Tiny's is in a category all by himself. I don't know if I ever met anyone like that guy.
Well, getting back to what life throws at you, he would work all day in a factory,
Yep,
hard job,
yep,
drive himself to Erie for chemotherapy treatments,
yep,
get sick, pull over, throw up on the side of the road on his way home,
yep.
get up and go to work the next day
And before that, he would chop stumps out of his yard till the sun went down.
before he went to bed, after the chemo.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, unbelievable.
I mean,
So you know the story we got to talk about. We got to talk about the story when he died on us, because that was unbelievable.
that's,
Right. So people know the story, but for anyone watching this thing here, Tiny was down training with us, and we had finished, and I had actually torn my knee up, and I had gotten out of the cast, but I still couldn't really bend it very well. And he was sitting down, and I was talking with him, and it was a pretty hard workout, you know. And
yeah,
he's sweating, he's talking, all of a sudden he keeled over. He fell over.
you thought it was blood sugar.
I thought it was his blood sugar. I thought his blood sugar had dropped. So I think it was Josh, actually, who went and checked him.
Just
and
pulse,
and
yeah.
said, I don't feel a pulse. I don't think he's breathing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, my God. So I went right down on my knees, didn't even think about it,
Right.
and started CPR on him.
Right.
and I had to crack his chest. And then the first breath I gave him, I did get his head back far
Tilt
enough,
aside.
and I breathed, I filled up his belly. And then I'm getting exhausted, so you said, I'll do the compressions.
Right,
You
because
keep-
I had CPR training years before. I mean, I wasn't up to date, but I remember them saying, person's going to get tired,
Right, tired. It's
exhausting.
And they've changed this now, right?
Yeah.
They changed the number of compressions to.
Yeah.
They feel, I think, the compressions are more important than the breaths at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's more of a fear of catching something from
I
the
don't know
person.
either.
I don't know.
I don't know either,
But
but-
you know,
I don't even remember what we were doing. 3-1
I was counting 5 compressions to whatever.
to 2 breaths or 1
Yeah.
breath or 3
Yeah.
breaths or whatever
Yeah.
it was.
But the problem was, and I tell this story, and people don't believe that we're talking 20 minutes.
Oh, it seemed
At
like
least,
forever.
but it was 20 minutes because the ambulance, we heard it go by, remember?
They couldn't find us.
They couldn't find the building.
They couldn't find us. Yeah, they couldn't find us.
And I thought for sure, and I get emotional about this because
Yeah.
that's a traumatic thing to do CPR. And I hand it to people that do it, save people. But we gave him, and we brought him, we kept him, kept his blood flowing and
But
everything.
do you remember him growling?
He's
during it?
growling. The guy is clinically dead. He has no pulse. He's not breathing.
Right.
The only thing keeping the blood flowing is chest
we're doing.
compressing and mouth to mouth,
Right.
and he's growling. And I get goosebumps just.
Well, you remember, so they finally got there, the paramedics or the
Yep.
EMTs, whoever they
Yep.
were, and there was a little girl. I say little girl.
Right.
She was
Young woman,
a young woman, tiny, and that kid, whoever that kid was.
and we're telling him zap him.
But they kept going. We kept doing it.
Yeah.
Remember, you don't stop.
Right.
And they they got his shirt cut off or whatever, and they put the electrodes on him and everything. And remember, they said, "Okay, stop doing it," and they scanned him. Remember that?
Yeah,
And it's
and the machine said
shock. Right?
shock him.
Advised shock.
Yep.
And they're like, "Don't touch him," and they shocked him. And you remember what happened?
He sat right up.
He sat up.
Sat up.
He sat up.
Sat up from dead
To, I'm
like you
here.
see in the movies or a cartoon.
Scared the living shit out of me when he did that.
Yeah, I mean,
And he was in pain.
yeah,
And
he's
disoriented.
bloated and
He's
didn't know what's
bloated,
going on. He's
his
in pain.
chest is broken.
Yes,
He doesn't know any. And remember the girl, honey, if you're in pain, just squeeze my hand.
and we all just yelled no.
It was like a scene out of the Rocky. No, because he would have just snapped her wrist. Like,
would-
he
oh, he
was
would've-
so ungodly strong.
He would have broke her hand.
We finally got him on the gurney. Finally,
And they're trying to make him lay down,
Jesus Christ,
and he wouldn't lay down.
he didn't want to.
No, because the air
The
that
air
was.
hurt, and he was disoriented. I'm like, give the guy a second, And we finally get him in the ambulance, and you know the story. I was going to get in the back.
Yep.
And they said, no, you can't.
Right.
It's against the rules and everything. So I got in the front. Then he grabbed that kid by the throat, and he's just smashing him one side or the other, and he's screaming bloody murder. He's
Well, doesn't
killing me,
he
he's
didn't know
killing
where
me.
he's at?
He didn't know, and that kid had. I mean, you
No.
talk about strong.
Right.
And then I said to the girl, "You want me to get in the back now? Get in the back! Oh my God!" And then he freaking punched me in the face.
I know. Well, I went down. We all went down to the hospital afterwards, and you come out, and I looked at your face. I'm like, "What happened?" I mean,
laid
it
me
looked
out.
like you were in a fight.
I was in a fight because that son of a bitch punched me in the face, and not once, but like
yeah,
twice.
it looked like
It
you
was
had
3 times, maybe.
You went. I can't remember if you had a bloody lip.
Oh yeah, he
You had
split my
a-
lip and he busted my freaking nose and my teeth.
I'm like, what happened?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
last
so-
we know, you're loading him in the ambulance, and you look like you went.
I come out and beat the shit. So I opened the back of the well. What happened was he was going crazy, obviously,
Right.
and he just whap and bang, and God damn it. So I'm trying to not hurt him, but I'm
Right.
trying to survive myself. Then he got sick. He's going to throw up.
Mm-hmm.
So we got him something, and I'm talking to him, holding his head, and I'm saying, "Buddy, it's going to be all right, man. We got to get you to the hospital." And then he went crazy again, and he's trying to claw and bite, and I got him into some half-ass lock and held him down, and I'm screaming, "Get to the hospital!" And I'm bleeding and busted up.
I know.
I get out of the back of the ambulance. My wife's cousin was the ER nurse. What the happened to you? I go, it's not me. It's that old bastard.
It's the other guy strapped to the gurney.
That guy there. He was dead about a half hour ago, and he woke up and kicked my ass.
Well,
She's
you
like,
and I
"What?"
always thought that we thought he was fighting death.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we always
It
thought.
was
I mean, he
unbelievable.
was fighting death.
He was not going. And I'll tell you, that was just the most bizarre experience of my life. And then I can remember sitting in the ER while they're taking him in. And I'm like, can someone give me a towel? Like I'm bleeding. And someone gave me some ice and I got it in my face. And people are just walking by me like I'm not even there, you know. Oh my Lord, man. That was, so he lives a lot longer after that. He lives a lot of years.
A lot of years.
And they end up finally putting that defibrillator in him. Remember that?
Yes.
Were you there the time it
Well,
went
it went
off?
off. I thought it was just going to be, I got this box in my chest, and I thought, it's going to monitor the heart rate, and it's going to,
Right,
Right. I thought it was just going to be, like a little,
No.
knocked him off his feet.
Yes.
I mean, it was like giving him the electric shot
yeah.
all over
Put
again.
him right down. But if you recall, I thought his back went out because he kind of
He was bent over.
he bent over like that. And remember, he had the shields on, the mitts, and Josh was working.
Right.
And he went, and that thing went off, and his arms flew out, and those pads hit the wall, and he fell down. And I'm like, oh my God! I thought, here we go again.
I didn't know what it was.
No, and he just rolled over. Keep training. He goes.
He
keep,
went off to the
keep
side by
training.
the wall.
I'll be okay in a little bit. What a freaking animal. So getting back to who's the toughest guy.
Yeah.
I have to say Tiny Seeley was in just a league of his own.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about Tiny was he was never a pro fighter. Like, he never fought a guy who was
Right.
at a high level. And so I take the pro fighters to a whole nother level in my mind.
Right.
If you have fought against guys who can punch and kick at your level or higher, it's a whole nother world.
Right.
So, but I would say Tiny had all the natural ability he could have been. He could have been a champion.
And he was solid.
Oh my God! It was
Because of our height, I was his partner all the time. And my arms, just by blocking and
yeah.
doing the drills we did for stand-up, it was like getting hit with a bat or something.
you
It was
didn't even
just, I
feel-
was so, everybody was happy when I showed up at class because they knew I would be his partner.
I used to put Timmy Desmond with him, and Tim would come out. I gotta go to work tomorrow. I got a plaster. I can't even hold on to a trowel. I said, you let that old guy kick your ass?
He took my excuse away because I was the oldest.
He took everybody's excuse away.
Yes.
Oh, I don't feel good. Oh, I've got aches and pains.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
This guy's been through surgeries and heart
Oh, my
attacks,
gosh.
and I mean,
Cancer.
The last time I saw him, I went to see him, and he was really sick. He was on a feeding tube, you know, and just even then though, as old and as sick as he was, I get there and I said to his wife Nancy, I said, is Tiny? Yeah, he's in the kitchen. So I go out in the kitchen. He's got the feeding tube and he's pouring whatever little drink.
Like the Ensure stuff in
yeah,
there. Yeah.
and then he finishes and tapes the
Yep.
tube onto himself. Then he goes, I'm like, Jesus Christ, really? Let's see you move. Let's see you move. You know, and he's doing all this stuff. I'm like, dude. So then we go out in the living room. We're sitting down, and Nancy's telling a story about these guys that came by. And she goes, I don't trust these guys. They wanted to get in the house and talking about something to do with cleaning the floors. And she goes, I didn't trust these guys. And Tiny's sitting in his rocking chair or whatever, his little recliner thing. And she goes, and what's he going to do? Tiny looks at me like this, and he reaches down, and he pulls out a machete about that long. Reaches down, pulls out a pipe. Pulls out, I mean, he's got about 20 weapons
Well,
sitting right there.
what about the story, the burglar that broke into his
Oh,
house
got it, yeah. Oh, he broke in, and the whole family come out after.
with weapons?
Weapons. And he was begging to be taken away that night.
The cop said he picked the wrong
You
house.
picked the wrong house.
We
man.
joked about it that
Yep.
the burglar called the cops to
Yes.
come get him
Please
out of
help.
the
Please
house.
Save me from
Get
this,
me out of here.
from these crazy people. So Tiny is, I would say I put him in just a whole nother level, really. There was never anybody like him, you know what I mean? And I never knew if I should consider myself a pure student, but I talked to his family and they said, oh, Tiny considered you one of his students. I
Yeah,
think, one of his real students. And the reason I say that is because him and I worked for a lot of years. I mean, I probably trained as much with him as anybody. We trained a lot together, but it was always trying to meld the two
Right.
ranges, the grappling versus what he did was Kun Tao, right?
Right.
And how can we combine these things? Because he didn't really have that grappling aspect. He didn't have that range.
No, but if you taught him that technique, how to collapse someone's
Oh,
diaphragm.
That's how I tore my knee up the first time.
And he just mastered that.
He got it.
Once
he
he
got
got
you
that-
inside control.
You were done.
You were done.
It was like a boa constrictor. He would just slowly. That technique is that you don't even realize it's happening.
No.
You
Every
don't
time
until
you breathe out, it gets a little tighter.
you don't know.
Which is what makes that technique so bad, is because if you realize something's happening, you can react and maybe
Right.
you think you're okay in that situation.
I'm relaxed.
And all of a sudden, you can't breathe anymore.
No.
And that guy's got you, and there's no getting out of it.
Right.
Yeah, he got that so
I would
well.
always wish that you would
Not taught him that.
taught
yeah.
him
A
that.
lot
But
of
you know,
guys said that.
you shared that with other people,
Oh, a lot of
myself
people.
included.
Sure.
But I could never grasp that.
he
And
got
they're
it.
just like all the other students down there. Once you got a technique that you became comfortable or could
Was your
pull
favorite
off,
technique,
yes, pull off, and
Well,
then,
my
and
thing-
then you always make them train. Okay, you can't use
Yeah,
that.
well, that's because that's what happened when I trained with Rodrigo Vaghi. Was I like to choke guys, right?
Right.
And I could choke a lot of guys, and he would say, "Okay, no more tonight."
No more chokes. Yep. Something else.
Or I would use strength, and I would get him, and he'd look at me and goes, "You know, you do wrong. You did wrong." Yeah, but I tapped the guy. So what?
Because you're relying on your strength.
Yep. And they'd say, "Tap me." Well, I couldn't.
Right.
His technique was too good. So that was something I learned from him, was to always train your weaknesses. And I remember asking him one time, because he had Hickson Gracie taught a seminar at his school when I was there, and I went and trained. That's the only time I trained with Hickson. But Steve had trained a lot with Hickson, and Steve and I went to the seminar together. And I remember asking Rodrigo, what makes him as good as he is? And he says, because he's the best in all the fundamental positions, all the basic positions. That's what makes him the best. And that's why they called it his invisible jiu-jitsu, because when you look at it, it looks like he's doing the same thing as anybody else.
Right.
But these small little changes that he's making makes it work. And one of the reasons that I think he got as good as he got was he wasn't afraid to work his weaknesses. He'd work out of the worst possible position. Like, he'd even say, "What's your best position? Let's start there." But that guy he's so phenomenal. He was like the baseball player calling his shot, or a boxer telling you what round he's going to knock you out in. He would say, in 10 seconds, I'm going to armbar your left arm.
Wow.
And you could hide it. You could send it. You could send it to Alaska. He'd still. And I remember Steve saying that. He goes, "Man, the guy." I train with him, and he's going to armbar. He'll tell you what he's doing. He goes, "I couldn't stop it, even though I knew he was going to do it." That's really something. So I came away thinking, train your weaknesses all the time. Once you get a strength, don't stop training it for a long period of time, but stop for a while so that you can work on your weaknesses. But you got to get out of your own ego. Your ego will get in the way because you think, well, I went in and I choked this guy and I choked that guy and I did this. Yeah. But what happens when those guys catch up? What happens then when that doesn't work anymore and you don't have anything else? You have no other skills to offer. Now what? Now you're in trouble. So yeah, that whole thing really came from those guys. Train your weaknesses. If you have something that's coming natural, set it down for a while, come back to it later. Too many guys, but you can argue it the other way around too, though. You can say there's guys that only have a couple of really serious, really good, but you can't stop it.
Right.
They're
well,
so good
that
at
worked
it.
for Rhonda for a long time. Armbar. How many matches did she win by that
I think
armbar?
it would have continued to work for her, but her problem was she listened to a guy who tried to tell her that she could box a world caliber boxer.
Yeah.
And
You've always said you don't box a boxer, you don't wrestle a wrestler.
Nope. And what you can pull off on a student or what you can pull off on a guy who's just allowing it to happen,
Or holding pads for you.
what you can do with that is a totally different. When you're dealing with two guys, that's why Chris has changed my opinion a little bit about Fred, because I wasn't too impressed with Fred. I've seen a lot of guys like that, and I'm like, about the time you got hit hard, or I wasn't standing in front of you, and all of a sudden it would change everything. Now maybe you'd whip my ass, maybe you would, but it wouldn't. I wouldn't just fall over like it was. That's not going to happen.
Right.
That's fantasy land. But what he explained to me was that type of technique is used in street situations where you sense there's going to be a problem, and you're not waiting for that other guy to.
Right. When is it your turn?
You're going to make it happen. You're the aggressor, and a lot of what Fred does is try to get you to react. and then you react, and then he's got you, right? So I've changed my thinking because I respect Chris so much.
Right.
That I wouldn't typically, but I wouldn't have a problem meeting Fred and training with Fred. And even at my old age, as beat as I am, I'd like to see somebody just knock me down. That's how I got involved with the whole thing. Remember the story about the Aikido school that I wanted to
go
try
out
it.
and yeah.
Yeah, and they were like, no, how disrespectful. Then I found my way to the jiu-jitsu school with Steve Yant. He didn't seem to have any problem.
No.
Oh, you want to come on down? Let's go.
Yeah. Get on the mat.
Get on the mat. And I got on the mat all right. Oy, oy, oy. And I've told the story 1,000 times. He tapped me, and then I thought, well, I wasn't ready. Let's go. Let's do it again. Yeah. Okay. Well, I wasn't ready like 100 times in a row, as it turned out. I never was ready. I was the ever-ready's brother, never ready. You know? Like I couldn't, well, I had to accept right then and there, this guy's got skills I don't have.
Right. Well, it goes back to when I first started training with you, and I touched base with the previous school was just starting because grappling was becoming more mainstream at the time. MMA fights were starting to be, so schools are going to want to generate more income somehow. Let's have a grappling class.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that instructor at that time, we'd move around and play, and he would tap me, but it was always relatively the same technique. I come to your school and you tap me maybe 15, 20 times in the first minute, 2 minutes, but everything was different.
Yeah, different techniques.
Everything different. And I've always said, you're back, you being a chiropractor, knowing the body as well as you do with the nerves and how it works.
Yeah, it helps.
It was a big advantage
That's true.
to you and the students that grasped what you were teaching us.
The thing about it was, Ray, I never considered myself like a great sport grappler. You know, I tell people I was an okay sport grappler. Like, I was okay. You had to know something to beat me, but there was a ton of guys that could beat me in that. But if you talk about, my goal was always how to go home from a real physical confrontation with some guy who's likely to, like, kick my ass. And so I had to have just enough grappling, and I had to have enough stand-up. And now, the last going on 6 years, I've been training nothing but weapons.
Right.
You know, that's all I've been doing. And that's another level of it. So, you know, I never looked at myself as like some really top-level grappler. But you had to know something to beat me, you know. And then, you know, you get with Goku, you get with a guy like at that level, and you're not going to beat him in his game because he's...
Well, that was the first time I've ever seen anybody...
just, do what they want with me.
Well, I couldn't believe, I'm like, oh, here comes the reverse, the famous, no.
Not with that guy.
And I was like, remember I had just had back surgery a few weeks, I was getting back on my feet. You talk about...
overcoming something.
Yeah,
right.
Having, 4 of my vertebrae back removed and have to literally learn how to walk again. You talk about weak.
Yeah.
And then coming back to train with you, getting thrown
train.
on the mat, and we go and meet Goka for the first time. And I'm recovering from my back surgery, taking it easy, obviously, and saw him handle you, I guess is no better term. I don't want to say it.
No two ways about it.
And I walk up to him, you and me. You
Yeah.
come to New York, remember?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
See, he was in a whole class, he was not used to people
No.
talking to him that way.
No, nobody ever really joked.
And I didn't even know him.
Yeah, right. Well,
It was my first.
but then
and
I
I stepped
remember-
on his foot. He's wearing sandals, and I stepped on his
but then he told you that when he came up to New York, you're going to have a Armenian death match.
death match. Yeah.
And then where was that? Was that down in Kentucky?
That
or-
might have been Kentucky, yeah.
So the whole drive back, I remember you saying, I was joking, right? He knows it. I said, it doesn't matter, dude. With that dude, you challenge that man. You're going to have to fight this guy now. Oh, shit, man. He knows I was joking, right? So he called me like the next day. Hey, you know how everybody's the Ray?
Yeah.
Hey, the Ray, he's a still shit the pants. I said, oh, Ray shit the pants, all right. Okay, we're going to have some fun with the Ray. He says,
That was before we put on the seminar with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so I tell people Goker is on such another level. Now, I don't care. There's 10 levels in his, not judo per se, but or if you're a pro fighter, but, the average guy learning the highest on system, there's 10 levels to it. Most guys if they're legitimate black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, will be at level 5 in his. And the reason for that is you don't know any takedowns, no throws, no reaps.
No leg techniques.
No leg techniques. Now, leg techniques are becoming more and more popular, but when I started, they were like a no-no. You never did leg techniques. It was considered like cheating, you know? Mm-hmm. Well, now there's, with the Danaher and the Death Squad and whatever that kid's name is it Gordon Ryan? They're all about leg techniques now, you know? But I just talked to Goker the other day. He called me, and we were talking, and you know, and I asked him about those guys. He goes, "Yeah, I've seen those guys." He goes, "I watch his video." I'm like, "When is this guy going to show something?" He's talking, because he's explaining the setup. John Danaher, right? Goker's like, "Just show me the thing that you're doing." He doesn't need all this setup.
Right.
But I would love. I mean, this is selfish on me. I would love to see Goker grapple that kid. He's the top guy in the world right now, in his prime. And that would be a hell of a thing to watch because Goker's pushing 60 at this point.
Yeah, he's fighting Father Time.
He's fighting Father Time, but he is so good at what he does. And, you know, the first time I ever really grappled him, I remember him saying to me, you know, you did good. I had to use strength to get you, and typically I can beat guys who are like no problem with.
Right.
But I had to use some strength to get. And then one time I remember we grappled, and I wasn't really. My problem was I never wanted to come off as disrespectful. So I didn't give my best a lot of times.
Well, you weren't healthy either. You had the hernia surgery.
Never was healthy. Always had, and I hated to bring it up because then it looks like you're making an excuse.
Right?
But I had surgeries and I was never healthy. But I remember one time in particular I didn't do much and we walked off and I think it was Matt said, "Man, you kicked his ass." And Goker looked at him and he goes, "He wasn't even trying." You know, Goker knew.
He knew.
I wasn't, but not to say I could ever beat the guy because that's a silly statement.
Right.
But I always felt like I could have done better.
Right.
I could have done better, but because of injuries and whatever. But that guy, the first time I ever grappled with him was at his school, his old school in North Hollywood. And he had just gone with some guy who had I think he had just won the Worlds in judo. And I had never seen high-level judo guys. And I'm telling you, you talk about scary stuff, man. Ho, ho, ho. And it was not some gentle, I mean, these guys were jerking and wham in the throws, and he got done demolishing this guy. And then he looks at me and goes, "You want to start to stand up?" I said, "No, I don't. I don't want to start."
Yeah, but
I know. Shit,
I've
man.
been thrown by him, and it's
easy.
It's like that, but they gently.
Oh yeah, when he
on the
throws
mat.
you or throws 100 other guys.
Yes.
When he throws me, not so gentle.
Wow.
Nothing gentle.
Well,
He freaking put it on me,
Yeah.
boy, and I was like, "Holy shit, this guy!" But he's just so good. In fact, he was so good, I couldn't get my head around it. Like I remember one time I was at a seminar and he beat this one kid. I forget the guy's name. I had watched him go through everybody else. He just ran through the whole crowd, man. And leg techniques and everything. And if you won the absolute, right? Remember they would have all the weight class winners grapple each other, and then whoever won the whole thing could train with him for free at the seminar the next day.
Yep.
And so this kid was going to come and train with us, and I remember having dinner with him. I said, "Listen, man, I hadn't known him that long, but I go, I would not play around with that kid. I'm just telling you. I watched him all day. He's unbelievable, this guy." I said, "His leg techniques are really good." "It's okay, buddy. Don't worry."
I remember that.
Were you there for
Yeah.
that? Remember that?
He gave him his leg.
Yes.
He
gave it to him.
Gave him his
and
leg.
I'm standing there. Kenny Hart was standing there.
Yep.
And I went, I tried to tell him. And about then you hear the guy yelling and screaming.
We didn't know what we didn't know what he was
What the
doing.
hell did you do to him?
You
And
gave
he
him
did
his
it
leg.
over and over and over again. I was so stunned by that. I remember calling him later. He went back to California, and of course, we're up in New York. And I said, "Listen, man, I just don't get this. Like, I've seen some good guys.
Right.
I don't understand how you can be that good." And that's when he asked me, "How long you been training?" And I told him, it was a bunch of years. And, "Well, how often do you train?" So when I was really serious, 6 days a week, a couple hours a night. Yeah, well, I've been training, 45 years or whatever it was.
And then he taught that kid, if you remember, what he was doing wrong with his leg techniques.
Yeah, another thing I seen him do one time is in Goker's tournaments, it used to be, I don't know if it still is, a 3-round thing where I think the first round is points, and then if nobody's up on points at the end of first round, then you go to submission only. And then if still nobody has won, the final one, it's a sudden death round, is who's ever back hits first loses.
Right.
Which basically takes the BJJ guys out of it because they want to jump guard and pull guard. And he told his own fighter, Goker, told the kid to pull guard, and it was a mistake. And the guy, remember, and the guy beat his guy.
Right.
Then Goker took the guy who beat his guy and showed him something. He goes, you did good, but I'll show you something to make you even better. That was amazing to me.
Yeah. I remember that.
It didn't bother him. He did it. Yeah. So
his own rules, and he forgot.
He just made a mistake. He forgot it was. I think he forgot it was the third round.
Yep.
And but he took the guy who beat his guy and showed him something. So that speaks really highly of him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I tell everybody, you might be a badass Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, whatever. You owe it to yourself to go and train with him.
If you want to test your mettle.
Find out what you're really made of, because that dude is on this whole nother level.
He welcomes you.
Oh,
he's not arrogant or anything.
No.
He's just,
anybody can train.
He's such a down-to-earth guy once you get to know him.
You wouldn't want to get him pissed.
No.
You would not want him angry. Remember the time in New York when the guy didn't want to pay him?
Saratoga, yeah. You guys come with me.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That's the only time I've seen him angry.
He was a little angry he wasn't too happy with
that. He was scary.
Scary. Yeah, he's a scary guy.
Yeah.
That's why, so you understand, when I see a guy like Fred or whatever, it's no disrespect to Fred so much.
Right.
But when you've trained with Tiny and Goker and a bunch of the Armenians that met and trained with those guys.
Yep.
I'm just not that easily impressed anymore. It's like,
right.
You think you're just, I'm so afraid. Really? What can you do exactly that I haven't seen? I don't understand. Like, what are you, from Mars or something? So it isn't to be disrespectful to anybody, but I'm just not that impressed because you beat up some students or something.
Or made some video.
You made some video. I'm not that impressed by that anymore. And reputation doesn't mean crap. Like, he's done this, and so what? Really? Yeah. Really? Have you? My experience has been most of those guys are full of shit, to be honest with you. And, you can't take away from real fighters. Look at Josh. Now, Josh came to train with me. I'm going to have him on here. And, he basically had run through all these schools in California.
Yeah.
And
ex-Marine.
He was an ex-Marine, tough kid.
Physically fit, man. Fire is physically
unbelievable.
Fit body. And
unbelievable.
Holy smokes.
And I told him from day one when he came to talk to me, I said, if you can beat me, then you can be the instructor, and I'll learn from you. Well, it didn't work that way.
No.
So then he wanted me to teach him, and I told him, I said, I can get you to a level of being a pro fighter, but if you want to go beyond that, like into the big times, you have to go train someplace with the top guys. We did pretty good because it was all of us down there training him,
right.
And it was hard training. But you can't. There's no substitute for training with the. Why do you think all these pros go and they train at these camps that are so good?
Yeah.
That's what you got to do.
You got to be. Well, it was back when I used to play basketball. You have to play with people that were far better than you to get better. Otherwise, you get stagnant. Right. You think you're this big fish in a little pond. You think you're good, but then you get exposed to some people that
are so much better.
Oh, even between division schools, the caliber and the size and physical fitness of these young men is incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And you won't even know it if you don't go and experience
exactly.
it. Exactly. That's why with me, I'm not. It's hard to impress me because I've trained with some of the world's best guys, and man, I've seen it and felt it and been there, and so I'm not that easily impressed. Well, that's how I got to know Goker, because if you recall, I always said you got to have 3 fighters. Jay would always say this, right? You got to have the guy that you pretty much dominate and you teach, and then you got to have the guy. This is ideally, ideal, and then the guy who's pretty much equal to you.
Right.
You get him some nights, he gets you some nights, but you're real close. And then you got to have the guy above you. You got to have your third fighter.
You got to beat you all the time.
Who's so much better than you, right?
Right.
And so I remember calling Jay D'Amato and saying to Jay, who in your opinion
is the best?
The best. And I thought he was going to say Rickson Gracie or whatever. And he said, no, Rickson's probably the best at jiu-jitsu. Right? I don't know who that is. But he's the best at jiu-jitsu. But as far as Jay was concerned, the best overall. And it didn't matter if you're talking judo, sambo, jiu-jitsu, whatever. He said Goker Shavushin's the best in the world. There's no question about it. And I knew who Golker was because I had followed his career, and I had almost trained with him. But the year I came back to New York, he went to Jay's school and taught a seminar, and I missed that seminar. But then I heard how, this guy's unbelievable. So once Jay told me that, that's when I called him and said, hey, I left a message, and he called me back at like midnight, which would have been 9 o'clock his time probably, or it might have been even 1 o'clock in the morning. I get the phone call, hey, this is Golker. Jesus Christ, really? You calling me? Yeah. And I told him,
Right.
I'd like to come out. I'd like to be evaluated, know where I stand, know where my weaknesses are and my strengths, and if you are willing to take me on as a student, yeah, okay. I'm going to be in Las Vegas, and we're going to have all these pro guys out there, and so that's what I did. I think Josh went with me that time, and we went out and met him, and then he invited me to train with him in California, and I went out there and never looked back really, but that's how I got training with him, was because based off of what Jay had told me.
Right.
And Jay was an interesting guy because in all the time I ever knew Jay or talked to him, I don't think I ever answered a question correctly once. Ever. Because Jay would go, well, you know why that is? And I'd say, well, yeah, because, no, that's not why. And then he would tell, and I'm like, well, that's a bunch of bullshit, Jay. But then eventually he would bring me around, and I would understand. I'd say, you know what? Yeah, I think I see your point, right? Mm-hmm. That was Jay. I had never answered a single question right, ever, the whole time. I don't think ever. He would always, no, that's not why. This is why. But when he said about Golker, I think he was, now look, you could argue all day. Who's the best? I don't know. Pretty hard to not include him in the top
Right.
few.
And as time goes on, who's going to be in that caliber moving up?
I don't
You know what I
know.
mean? I mean, there's no one who's going to replace Tiny.
No. Well, then you're dealing with the individual person too, right?
Yeah, but even so, the talent, yes, I'm not Tiny. We're not Golker. Yes, there's certain limitations. We all have limitations.
And I had to know, and I had to accept the fact I never got into hardcore martial arts training until I was 28. Now you were, I don't know.
40. Well, when I
No,
started,
when you started
karate,
right? 32, 31,
25, I think.
25, right? So
No, I'm sorry. 32.
right.
I started 32.
So you were even older than me when you got started in that.
in that.
Because I was 28.
Because it took me 8 years. You're right. I just got my black belt and
Right.
trained with.
So
yes.
I got into it when I was 28, which is old. There's guys who've been fighting forever by the time. Look at Carl Parisian. I mean, that kid had how many pro fights by the time he was 19?
Yeah. Right.
Unbelievable, right? So I knew, one, I started late. Two, I was a hobby guy. I've never confused myself. I've never thought, oh, I'm a world-class grappler. I'm a world-class fighter. No. But I went further than I ever thought I could go as a hobby guy. Like a guy just did as a hobby, you know what I mean?
Right.
And
But I think that's what made you a better instructor than most.
I think I was a better instructor than I was a practitioner, to be honest with you. I mean, that's my opinion. I think I was
Well,
better.
there was no ego involved there.
Not really.
You know what I mean? It's being exposed to the different instructors I've had. It was really, and we've become best friends.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that was a whole different thing. We've had a long journey the last 22 years.
Yeah. But
But
well,
never.
that's the value of it in
Right.
my mind, because I got a
Right.
best friend, and I get, not everybody. You know how that goes. I
Mm-hmm.
had guys that I took in that I treated great, and they stabbed me in the back.
Yeah.
They still stab me in the back to this day.
Yeah.
And they can't truthfully point to one thing I ever did that I harmed them or I did
Right.
wrong by them.
Right.
But, people are funny, man. You do a lot for them sometimes, and it turns out Golker and I've had a lot of conversations about that.
Well, they don't know how to handle it.
They don't know how to handle it.
It's
right.
their issues, not
Yeah,
yours.
Right. So,
But it still messes with you, man.
well, when you give everything you have to give, and then the guy turns around and stabs you right in the back,
Yeah, and
it's like, really, dude? I didn't even have to take you on and that was the other thing. I never went and looked for anybody. I didn't try
Right.
I never asked anyone to train with me.
Right.
No, except for, two guys. One was Terry Gray. I had come back on a break, and I ran into Terry, and he wanted to know what I was doing. And I said, well, I got into this grappling stuff. You know what I mean? I've been doing that. And he's like, well, what is it? So him and I had a go, as they
Right.
say. Jesus Christ, that was a whole nother. We talked about it the other night. And then the very next, the other guy was Matt Eklund. So Matt was working at the movie store. Matt
Right.
grew up down the street from where I grew up.
Right.
I knew who he was. He was younger than me, but I knew him for a long time. And I went in, and he's watching on this little TV. He's watching some kind of grappling. I think it might have been pancration or something. And I rented a couple movies, and I said, "Do you like that? Are you into that stuff?" "Oh yeah, yeah." I go, "You want to learn it?" And Matt looks at me, and goes, "From who?" I said, "From me." He goes, "From you?" I said, he goes, "What do you know about it?" I said, "I've been training in St. Louis." So he showed up with Joe Janko and his brother. What was his brother? Mark, and a couple other guys, and they wanted to find out if I was the real deal or not. That was the only time I ever said, "You want to train with me?"
Right.
I had no one to train with.
Well,
and
you
I
were
wanted
trying to
train.
get someone.
I
You're
wanted
looking
to
for
train with somebody.
partners.
Yeah, I didn't have anybody.
mean-
but once I started, then I never asked. I never went and sought anybody out.
No.
They
Well-
sought me out. I didn't go after them and say, "You want to train with me?" I never did that.
Right. Mark is the one that introduced me to you.
Right. Right.
And Mark's also the one who we had and I'm not mentioning names, come to the previous school who said he was a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And Mark said, "BS.
You're not.
You're not old enough. You haven't. There's no way
you
you
haven't
have a
put enough
black
time in."
Exactly.
Right.
There's no way that you could be a black belt in Brazil just because he knew some techniques and he had some classes. Bought himself a black belt somewhere.
Yeah. Well, that happens. I tell people it probably took me longer than almost anybody to get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu. But a lot of that was political. It
Right.
wasn't right.
There was
So
a lot of politics.
There was a lot of politics in it. When I remember when, at one point, when I first trained with Goker says, "Listen, I can't really rank you where you deserve to be ranked because you're brand new. You got to put some.
You're
time
going to
in.
upset people. He's
You're
going
going
to
to upset people. You got to put your time." I said, "Look, I don't care about ranking. All I care about is training, right? I just want to train and be taught." Well, then eventually, though, I got to a place where I didn't give a shit what these guys thought. And I said, "Look, I've put my dues. I want to be ranked where I deserve to be ranked.
Right.
Whatever you tell me." And that's when he gave me my black belt. And I said, "I don't know, man. I don't know if I deserve a black belt." "No? You don't He says, "You don't deserve?" I said, "Well, that's not, it's up for you to decide, not for me.
Yeah,
I do decide. You tell me I don't decide good, right?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Dude, whatever."
Well,
But I didn't feel like, honestly, I was deserving of it at that point.
if you train long enough, and this is my opinion, if you train long enough and you're serious about the art, no matter what art you're at, the belt doesn't give you any more techniques or anything.
No.
That's just at a
bookmark.
point, it shouldn't come to be a matter of, you shouldn't care about it at one point. You know
No,
what I mean?
because the truth is, would you want a belt that you didn't deserve?
Exactly. It's just like when we I competed for a black belt for 3 years, even though I was brown.
Right.
It didn't. So I got my black belt. It didn't miraculously.
Yeah, right,
I know so much more.
right.
No.
Right.
No.
No, it doesn't matter.
It comes to a point, and I think, and I give that credit to my previous instructor. That's what he was looking for, to come to that point where the belt didn't matter to
It
you,
doesn't matter anymore.
and that's when he gave it to me.
Yeah, I get that. I think that's a good thing.
You know,
in Sambo, in real Sambo, there's no belt ranks at all.
Right.
There's no belt ranking in boxing. There's no belt ranking in wrestling
Right.
or Sambo. Your skill speaks for itself, man.
Right. And I think the belt ranking came about just so schools have a way to make money.
Well, it came out of judo, my understanding was. Judo, who invented all the whole thing, that guy, he was a teacher. And so, he wanted a way to keep score and keep rank. Well, now, of course, it's a moneymaker.
Right.
When I started, there used to be, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there was like, white belt, blue belt, brown belt,
Yeah.
purple belt, brown belt, black belt, right? Well, now they've added several different,
Oh yeah.
and it's all changed. There's a guy on YouTube, he's out of, I can't remember now, Kama Jiu-Jitsu out of Houston. Very knowledgeable guy, and he's broken down all the belt rankings and the way the Gracies have done it and the way they've changed it. And, I think that's fine, but to me, a belt rank is really only valuable between you and your instructor. Outside of that relationship, it doesn't matter.
Right.
I mean, Hoist Gracie said a black belt will cover 2 inches of your ass, and the rest you're going to have to take care of, right? How many guys have gone into MMA fights with legitimate black belts and gotten just destroyed? I mean, now a black belt, it does mean something within that relationship, but outside that so you say you get a legitimate black belt and you go to another school and the guy goes, "Oh, you're really just a purple belt." All right, whatever. I mean,
Well, we had not at your school, at the previous school, we'd have people come in that were, from other schools that were a black belt, but me personally being me, I didn't respect that because you didn't earn it here, and I don't know what your training's been, and
Well,
I
how
don't
many
even know
black
if it's.
belt-
I don't even know if it was
If it's
legit.
Well, how many black belts showed up at our school and just got dismantled?
Yeah.
Like they didn't even know the first thing about it.
No.
In stand-up too,
Yeah.
not just necessarily at the ground.
Right.
So
We've had that discussion.
Yeah,
There's a
it's-
lot of faults.
there's a lot of nonsense out there. But, so martial arts, I've had people ask me, a lot of parents have asked over the years, what's the best art to get my kid into? Now, I tell them a lot of times, well, depending on how old he is, I don't know if it matters so much the art, but I would look at the person teaching. Have a look into their background, find out what they're about. Somebody said to me the other day, another good thing is take a look at their social media pages. What kind of crap are they putting out there? The first thing I would say is if they have a criminal record, I would have a hard look at that.
Yeah.
If you've got a criminal record, now I'm not even saying that that's necessarily a deal breaker, because I do believe you can make a mistake and you can be redeemed. I believe in that, but I wouldn't just ignore that. That's something. You didn't go to prison because you had a bad day.
Right.
That's not why you went to prison, right? And a lot of guys, they might be convicts. That doesn't make them ex-criminals. They think that way. That's their whole persona. I would have a hard look at that, number one. The other thing I would tell people is take a look and find out how much time they spend criticizing other schools and other instructors. And if they do that, I would get away from them, because I don't know any legitimate guy who's really good who criticizes anybody, honestly. Now, it's one thing if these pro fighters want to sell a fight.
Right.
They talk smack and they talk all this
Yeah,
crap. But they don't spend time getting on there and bad-mouthing somebody.
Those are some valid points, because I've been asked too, and I didn't. Of course, I'm not on social media.
Thank God for that. I think.
But those are valid points. Check their background.
Yeah.
But I always say, I say, if it was me and I had to start all over again and I was young enough, I would start with judo.
Yeah, I think so too. I think judo's probably, or wrestling, either one would
Yeah.
be good.
And people go, judo? And I go, yeah. I said, can you imagine someone slamming you
Well, here's
to
the other
the
thing.
street?
But here's what happens. Judo got changed where it started focusing mostly on the throws. But old school judo had everything, including strikes. They had strikes. They had Newaza, which is the ground fighting. They had everything. The Gracies, in fact, were taught Goshin Judo. They were taught old school judo. They called it jiu-jitsu, but they were taught judo. But they they emphasized the ground aspect and not the throwing. And like Elio Gracie, he wanted to take a lot of the strength out of it and the physicality out of it, because he was a skinny little guy.
Right.
So he kind of turned the guard into a really offensive position. I mean, that's, I think, his greatest contribution. And they did change it, but there was nothing new. I mean, they didn't invent anything.
Things have been around. Martial
Forever.
arts have been around for centuries.
And grappling's been around forever. So I think judo's a fantastic. If you're young, I think you're right. I mean, man, one throw, I don't think people realize if you don't need 10 throws.
No.
You only need one or two
Right.
that you're proficient at. And man, most fights would be over in a second.
Even the simplest ones that Goker does with a sidestep and sweep your
Oh,
leg.
my God, man.
You're on your back before you know
a
it.
second.
And you're not even. And he's with me. He was helping me.
Well, he did
fall.
that. He did
But
that
you do
with
that in
you.
the street, and the
Oh, are
head
you
bounces off the
kidding me?
concrete.
Oh,
Then what are you going to do?
you're done.
You're vulnerable.
And you're probably done anyways.
Yeah, but I
Probably
mean,
have a concussion.
then you're up to the mercy of the person that just
So
did
I
that.
asked Goker one time, how is it that you can take these guys that are legitimate black belts, really good, and you can get them? And he goes, because they're not used to being thrown. He goes, I knock them down, and then I stun them. They're not used to that.
Right.
And once they hit, that gives me my opportunity, right? And he's got them. But it's such a big thing, man. That judo, to me, I think you're right. Now, or sambo would be another, but that's another whole nother conversation. But
Right, but then you're going into legitimate
if you
instructors.
can find a legitimate instructor,
Yes.
you got to.
And then the background. That is valid
Well, then the
points.
background comes, right? So, but to me, that's the number one thing. And the other thing I would say, how long has this guy's students been around?
Right.
How long has his friends been around? Does he change them out every few years?
Right.
Right now, you and I have been best friends for 22 years or something.
Right.
I've got good friendships that have that go all the way back, right?
Right.
I don't switch out friends. Once I'm in, I'm in.
Right.
Unless I'm not allowed to be or you screw me, or you basically stab me in the back. But
Give you a reason not to
give me a reason, but I don't change out. So a lot of these guys, they're constant. The other thing is, I notice this is another thing that guys do. They'll change their instructors a lot. Like they're with this guy for a while, then they switch now with this guy, and then they're with another school. And I mean, what is that about? Are you just trying to buy a belt, or not to say that you shouldn't change instructors or whatever, but there's something about keeping long-term relationships, man.
Right.
That tells me something about your character. And I think that's what I tell people. Look at the person doing it. Also, do they abuse their students?
Right.
Now, having said that, I probably abused all my students early on. But I didn't feel like I was abusing them as much as I was trying to make them
Abusing but not hurting them.
not hurting, not injuring them.
Yes. I
Not
mean,
injuring them.
no.
No, I got hurt worse than anybody in the school
You had
myself
some
personally.
Yeah, pretty
Bad injuries.
bad injuries.
Torn remember
Oh,
that big dude that what was he, like 6'5",
yeah.
300 pounds,
even
all
muscle.
And I grappled him, I forget how many times in a row, and tapped him. And
Yep.
the last time he wanted to go, and I tore my tricep.
It sounded like, and I'll never forget that, because me and Tiny were sitting there, because you said you had these guys coming from, we don't know these people, what they're up to.
Dunkirk, I think.
Came in from Dunkirk, yeah, and there was 3 of them at the time.
Yep.
He brought 2 friends, so me and Tiny figured, well, you know what, we're going to go down and have it your back.
Yeah.
This is not going to be, because
Right.
you don't know.
You don't know what
You
they're
don't
gonna
know
do,
what's going
right.
to go. But it sounded like a T-shirt ripping.
Well, that was bad because when
And I couldn't believe, I thought, he's stopping because the T-shirt ripped, and it was your
My
tricep.
turned black.
Yeah.
I tore the inner head right off.
Yeah.
And then I went out and threw up. Remember that?
Yep, went outside throwing up.
It was brutal. There's another injury, right? But that guy wasn't so much, he wasn't anything he did. He was not
No,
a
it was
bad
just
guy.
no.
He was a 300-pound guy of all muscle, and when I went in, he came in.
Yep.
And it tore my tricep, But you can have injuries, but abuse, injuring people purposely. There was a guy in town who did, I think, Muay Thai or whatever, and he had a reputation. He kicked his own students in the head, and he gave them concussions. And I mean, really? You have no control?
Yeah.
I would avoid people like that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I would avoid people who, if you've got a criminal background, if you talk a lot of crap on the internet, particularly on the internet, man.
Yeah.
The guys that I know who are really serious, badass guys, the last thing they would ever do is get on the internet and talk shit about somebody.
Right.
They're going to be the kind of guy that will go knock on your door if they got a problem with you.
Right.
And I have no problem with that. I'm good with that. Come knock on my door,
Mm-hmm.
whoever you are, if you got a problem with me. We'll figure it out one way or the other.
Even if it's just to have a discussion.
I'm not even saying it's got to turn into violence, but
Right.
I don't have a problem with that. I got problems with guys who hide behind their little desks, and they remember the story of the guy talking crap about Goker and pissed him off, and he finally found out where the guy lived, and he went because the guy was talking all this smack about him, and it turned out to be some young kid. You remember that story? And Goker went to his house and scared his father so bad,
Yeah.
he threw the kid's computer out
Out the window.
Said he'll never do it again, I promise.
Well-
He's talking crap about a guy who's a professional. What are you, crazy?
Didn't know anything.
Just stupid shit.
Yeah.
So that's what I would tell anybody looking to get their kids into it, or even themselves. If you're young, I would agree. I think judo is a fantastic thing to start with.
Right.
A great thing to start with. But it
You
doesn't
got to
really
be
matter.
diversified though too.
You can be
You can have a good background in judo, but you're gonna have to learn how to strike.
You're going to have to learn all that stuff.
You're gonna have to learn how to fight off your back.
Yeah.
You got to be comfortable in a phone booth, as I
I
say.
think so. And also there's weapons too. So
Yeah,
if
that's
you
a
wanna-
whole nother
a
world.
whole other world out there, right? So whatever it is, but and also what are you doing? What's your motivation? If you want to, like sports jiu-jitsu, if you say, look, I just want to I want to do it, I want to compete, I don't care about self-defense,
Right.
that's fine.
Right. If you just want to get physically fit,
That's fine.
it's
No
a
problem.
form of exercise.
Yeah,
I mean, I
anything.
was in some of my best shape training with you when I was in my mid 40s. I mean, my gosh,
That was some brutal training.
unbelievable, unbelievable.
That was some brutal training.
And that's how when you say abused us, I
Yeah.
think that's how you abuse us, by pushing our bodies to the limit,
To the
not
limit, right.
not in a negative way.
Well, what I never did was, like, there's a film of Fred where he's taking this kid
And just slap
and
them.
hitting him in the neck with a knife. Like now, maybe maybe he did that to drive home the message. If you think you're going to block this, you can't.
Right.
And I'm going to leave you with I get that. So maybe that was what was going on.
Right. Because you've done how fast
But
you're
always
gonna
to
be.
the
Yeah,
chest.
and not hard.
Just
Boom.
I'll crack you till you realize you can't block it. You can demonstrate, but if you are really abusing people, that's not a good thing.
Right.
And that says something about who you are, right? Mm-hmm. But
Your character.
your character or lack of character, yeah. I would recommend that people avoid that stuff, honestly.
Right.
But I think if you can train and get involved with a good school, of course, martial arts is a funny world, man. Not everybody in it is a good person.
No, and the schools are limited.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on where you're living, there's, you go to Erie and there's probably, or Buffalo, larger metropolises. There's schools and plazas and everything else.
They're all over the place.
Jamestown.
Right. Yeah, I don't even know.
I don't.
I don't know because all I do now is teach privates.
Right, but
And-
I don't
and
even
not
know if
many.
there's a school involved.
Well, I know there's Kinetics. I think those guys do mostly sports.
Oh, yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
Josh still trains
Down there, that's right. I
I never
forgot
met
about
them.
that.
I don't even know the guys. I've sent people. I said, well, it's the only place I know you could go
Right.
train.
I forgot about that place.
Yeah, I think they're still doing whatever it is they're doing. I don't know. There might still be a little bit of judo around. I don't know.
Maybe the Y.
Maybe I don't know.
Oh yeah, Mr. Kahanik, I think, teaches down to
Judo.
judo.
Yeah,
Paul.
Paul Kahanik. I met him once.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. So there's things around, but yeah, but I think at the end of the day, if you can't take a lesson that you're learning in that and apply it to your life to make you a better person, I don't know. I mean, the whole physicality is going to be a short-lived thing in your life. You're not going to do that forever.
Right.
And then you're going to get to the age where you're either too old or too sick or too injured. But can you look back on it and take anything into your life? Did it make you a better person? And that's always the hope of martial arts, right? People talk about that all the time. But I found a lot of times I don't find guys necessarily better human beings because they did it, depending on what school they got into.
Right.
It didn't equate,
No.
And I've had guys, and you know who they are. I mean, one guy was a student of mine for years and just stabbed me right in the back. For what good reason? Absolutely no good reason whatsoever. Now, can I look at him to this day and go, there's a stand-up guy? Boy, no. I look at him and just think, you're just a coward. You're just a worm. I don't have any respect. I don't badmouth him. I'm not going to badmouth him right now. But you know who I'm talking about.
I know exactly
And
who
there's
you're
a
talking
couple other guys who I'm talking about. And I just look at those guys and think, for whatever skill you got physically, it didn't equate to make you a better human being.
Right.
And to me, if you can't look at whatever time you've had and whatever art you're doing, and you can't say, yeah, I think it made me a better human being, or I've made lifelong friendships out of it. I mean, I've been friends with you from day one. I'm still friends with Steve. I met him almost 29 years ago, and we're still best friends. Not a lot of guys can say that. Some guys, like one guy came up to me at a seminar, I think you were there, and wanted to meet me because he had trained with one of my former students who had nothing good to say about me. And he goes, I've always wanted to meet you. I said, okay, great, And he goes, I've heard a lot about you, so I'm sure you have. And I said, are you still training with so-and-so? And he goes, no, I think I reached my expiration date with him too. That's a typical thing with that guy. So eventually, everybody, more or less, it turns into the same crap because of who he is.
Right.
Well, I don't care how good you get. You could be a world. Look, some of these guys win world championships, multiple world titles. They get into the Hall of Fame, and then you find out, well, they went and beat their wives up, or they assaulted some guy. Look what Conor McGregor did.
I was just thinking that when you said that.
I mean, he punched some old guy in a pub because he didn't want to try his whiskey or something.
Yeah, he's got some brand of Irish whiskey, and the
Yeah.
guy refused it, and
He slapped him or something.
Yeah.
And then he slapped an official over in, I think it was over in Ireland or somewhere. He got in thing, and it was an official, and he slapped that guy. And to me, you got to give him his due. He's an amazing guy. I mean, what he pulled off was great.
but his character sucks.
I'm like, yeah, what are you doing, man?
You have an opportunity to not set an example or be someone's role model or anything, but you do have a certain obligation to be a decent human being.
I think you got an obligation to be a decent human being, regardless.
True.
If you're the guy sweeping
But if you're,
floors,
when you're persona gets magnified to the world level like that.
Right.
And you can't take that common courtesy to live up to, even if it's not your expectations or whatever, you should have the common decency to respect other people.
Jay D'Amato used to tell me, when you get a lot of physical skills, that is not a license to be an asshole to people. You're, in fact, just the opposite, right?
Right.
The more you become skilled and dangerous person, you are required to really conduct yourself in a certain way.
Because you do have people that
There's no
follow
question.
you.
Kids look up to you,
And
whether you wanted it or not.
And they're going to want, you be a dick.
Right.
Oh, it's okay to be a dick.
No, it's terrible. So I look at that. That's what I tell people. Look at the person, look at their background, find out what kind of person they are. And, I've said for years, I wouldn't walk across the street to train with some guy because he was if he's a total idiot, I have no interest in meeting him. None whatsoever. It doesn't matter to me what kind of big shot you are. If you're a total jerk, an idiot, why would I care about that?
Right.
Now you look back in history and you look at guys like Muhammad Ali. As time went by, he became an ambassador of how to live your life too, not just as a great boxer, but when you look back on how he lived his life and what he talked about and how he, people really admired the guy for who he is as a human being.
Right.
And he went through a time when he wasn't admired. He went through a time when he was vilified, wouldn't go into the service, and now he's a hero to a lot of people.
Right.
But then you've got, now I think Mike Tyson's an interesting guy because he went through the whole thing. He went from being like an outlaw kind of guy. Now, as he's getting older, I listen to a lot what he says, and man, there's a lot of wisdom in what that guy's talking about. He's talking about how to be a decent person and, and everything. And that's great. I think that's great because he's been able to find that within him.
Yeah, and of course, I don't know Mike, but I think he was a victim of the people that were around him at that time.
I think that's true too.
Conditioned him to become a certain way.
Well, he comes from bad background. Right.
And then
he's a young kid. And then he runs into Cus D'Amato, who helps him.
Right. And I said his downfall was when Cus D'Amato and him split.
Yep. Well,
that's my personal opinion.
Well, Cus died, and then he had Jimmy Jacobs, and who was the other one? Teddy Atlas, and there was one other guy. I can't think of his trainers now. He got away from him. I think Don King got his hooks into him, and it just. But now, when I listen to what he has to say, I'm like, man, that guy is doing great things now. He just said he won't box anymore. They wanted him to box that kid, that Jake Paul or whoever he was. Mm-hmm. And I just read today, he goes, I don't want to do it because now it's turning into a money thing again. It's taking all the fun out of it for me. I have no interest in it.
Yeah, and what is he, 57 or something like that?
He's close to my age, so he's probably 56, 57, something.
Because I heard about, it must have been promoted a little while ago.
It was.
And that he was going to fight again. I'm like, what?
And offered him some huge amount of money. I wish they'd call me and say, do you want to fight Jake Paul for $100 million? Yes.
Does it matter if I get knocked out?
Well, if you got to put that on it.
Well, I'm just saying from my perspective.
Yeah, right.
Do I still get paid if I get knocked out?
Exactly.
But then there's the risk, all joking aside, taking a punch from those world class.
I don't know that Jake Paul's a world class anybody. He's he's a tough kid, I've no doubt, but.
No, I meant from like Tyson.
From Tyson, right. Well,
even at 57, I wouldn't want to get punched in the head.
Well, I wouldn't really want to
or a body shot.
I really wouldn't either. But for $100 million to $10 million, whatever, I'd shave a lion's ass in a telephone booth for that kind of money. I mean, look, you could get hit by a car.
True.
For free.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind. But no one's going to watch me. No
one's going to pay-per-view.
They're not going to do that. No. Nobody's going to do that.
They can go on YouTube and watch street fights
or
whatever they want.
There's tons of them.
Free.
You don't have to pay. But I thought it interesting that Tyson is a point in his life, if what I read was real, who knows? If it was legit, that he just said, no, I don't want to do this. It's not.
Good for him.
It's not where I'm at in my life anymore. Which I would say was probably lucky for that other guy, because that dude, even at his age, holy crap, man.
Body shots?
Oh, a head shot, body shot, whatever. Unbelievable. But I respect him because of the kind of person he is. You know what I mean? And I think it's an interesting thing.
He evolved to this person.
He did. Yeah, he did. He absolutely did. Now you got other guys, they never evolved.
Right.
They just stayed thugs, and they were always thugs. And that's all they'll ever be. They'll never be anything else. Why would you want anything to do with those people? I don't care how good you are.
You can never trust them.
The last time Goker called me a week or two ago, hey, my friend Ken, he always starts like that. How you doing, buddy? How's the family? How's everybody? Kids okay? Wife okay? Right?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes.
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
If it was just some thug thing, I don't have an interest in that. I can't stress that enough with people, is make sure you know the kind of person you're dealing with. I don't care what their physical attributes are. I don't care. I saw an interview with George St. Pierre. He said when he was at his peak, he liked to believe he was the baddest dude in the world. And he goes, but I always knew just anybody with a knife or a gun, and I was done. So how tough are you, really?
No.
If a guy really wants to do damage to you, I don't care what level you're at.
Right.
If they want to do damage to you, they will find a way.
They can shoot you from across the street.
Shoot you from across the street. Walk up, hey, can you give me the time, and stick you with a knife faster than you even know. And the other thing that he said that I thought was cool was he goes, and after I would fight, or even before maybe, he would drive around neighborhoods, just normal, and realize the guy mowing the lawn didn't even know who he was and didn't care who he was.
No.
And it kept him balanced. He never let his ego get.
Yeah,
that's a guy
there's only a certain group of fans
who even know what you're doing.
Who you are.
Right.
And any sport.
Right.
Right. People talk about football players. I don't know who that is.
Right.
Or basketball. I don't follow sports. I have a clue.
Right.
And they look at me like, "What's the matter with you?" Mm-hmm. I'll watch an occasional football game or whatever, but I'm not a fan. I don't have hundreds of dollars worth of jerseys and stuff. People go insane over that stuff.
Yeah, I know.
It's
Yeah,
blows my mind.
I don't get that either. That's a hard thing for me to understand. Well, I'll tell you what, man. I appreciate you coming on here.
Oh, this was fun.
This was fun. I want to do it more. I want to get some more. I want to get Josh on with you and get some other guys, get Matt on, and different guys, and
reminisce
just reminisce and keep talking about martial arts. What guys have learned over the years, what they took, what the good was, what the bad was, whatever. I just think that what we had down there was so unique. And it was more than just the physical training. I tell people all the time, look, you can learn jiu-jitsu from anybody these days.
There was a brotherhood there.
There was a brotherhood.
There was a tight-knit group of guys, man.
And we had a lot of fun. I mean, we got a lot of stories we can talk for a long time. The trips we went on.
I was going to say, the road trips to seminars were
we had a lot of fun. There was a lot of fun. And that's the part that I liked the most and I missed the most. That's why now, all right, we're all getting older. Do we want to go down and do that? No, we can't. Our bodies.
Right.
But we can do this.
Right.
We can still do this. And this, remember, we'd always do the board.
Yep.
Right? And that's what I did. Before I did these, I did like 90 of them. They're little short ones.
Right.
But that's fun, too, to talk about those and how they apply to your life.
And I still apply. And I'm not, obviously not, there's so many, but there's a few that that I've used, First, don't lose. Like you said, financially. I can remember the day you said that, how you use that as an example of how to apply it in life.
Right.
How is First Don't Lose going to help me financially? Get your credit card debt under control.
Right.
I was like,
stop spending.
Not that I had it, but I was like, boom, a light bulb went off. I was like, that makes sense. That's how I'm not losing.
Stop spending $200 a month for cable.
Yeah.
And $7 every day for a coffee.
Yes.
And whatever else.
Stop losing.
Track your spending, and you're holy shit, man.
A moment in time.
A moment in time.
Oh, dude.
That's a big one.
Fire stress levels at work.
Yes.
And people upsetting you or whatever. It's just a moment in time.
Just a moment in time, right.
Just try to collect myself and relax and calm myself.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work.
No.
But at least I make the effort. And it's there.
You're aware of it,
embedded in me.
Yeah.
Thanks to you.
Well, if you think back on times when you were in the worst possible positions on that mat and you were able to calm down, think, not rage.
Right.
And the next thing you realize, that dude, if he's not tapping me, he's got to move eventually.
Right.
And when he does, that's my opportunity, right?
Yes.
I can better myself. Life is like that. Life is moving and changing whether you're aware of it or not.
Correct.
And sometimes the world's got you by a stranglehold and you think, I'm done, there is no way possible. No, That's not the nature of life. Life is changing.
Small
moving.
increments.
Small, tiny
Make small
changes,
adjustments in that.
tiny little movements, right? Still is still moving. Even when you think there's nothing happening, it's always happening. Life's in flux.
Right.
You know, and you can turn it around. But I love the grappling. It spoke to me. It wouldn't speak to everybody, obviously, right? There were people, remember I used to say, never offer a sword to a poet or a poem to a swordsman? For a lot of people, if you said, look, there's a fantastic thing, and you can go down there, and these guys get in pajamas, and then they try to choke each other unconscious, and they get really sweaty, and they're all over each other. What? No.
No.
I have no interest
No.
in doing anything. Like
Right.
that may not speak to that person, but maybe music speaks to that person, or
Right.
maybe whatever, maybe climbing a mountain. I was watching a thing the other night where these guys climb mountains. I'm like, you got to be out of your damn mind. I wouldn't have the least interest. And the one dude who came down, his brother died, and he lost I don't know how many toes and fingers to frostbite, and he's considered one of the great. I'm like, dude, I'm glad for you. It wouldn't speak to me.
No.
So just like going fast in a car.
Right.
There's guys who, you know, the more speed they can get, motorcycles.
Motorcycles.
More speed they can get, the better. Not me. Doesn't speak to me. But I always believed that no matter what you did, you could always find these lessons in life if you paid attention, if somebody could point them out to you. I'm not ever saying the grappling or the martial arts is the only way to do it. I think there's tons of ways to do it.
Right.
It just happened to be something that spoke to me.
Right.
It spoke to me, and I think it spoke to all the guys who were down there. It brought us together. The other funny thing was we were from all walks of life. And it didn't matter color, didn't matter education,
Nope.
it didn't matter anything.
Background, anything.
Nothing. We had cons. We had guys who had served time in prison training with cops.
Yeah.
We had guys. We had and everything else and everything in between. And it didn't. That was the whole idea. Was when you went down there, all that bullshit dropped away. The other thing that dropped away was the excuses. Who are you
Yep.
going to blame?
Yep.
Look at Tiny. He took everybody's
Everyone's
excuses away.
excuse.
He took everybody's excuses away. And that's what I loved about it was it was such a level playing field. There wasn't anybody. You remember the one kid came down? I forget whose friend he was. It might have been Mike Baum's. A black kid, looked like a bodybuilder. Did you ever meet that kid? Oh my God, his waist was like this, and he was a competitive bodybuilder.
I'm
Well,
trying
if
to
you ever, maybe you weren't around. He trained for a little bit. Super nice kid, but he found out all that muscle was not good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the poor guy was outside throwing up and just
exhausted.
wrecked. And I told him, I said, this is a lesson in life for you. The very thing that can be your best strength can be your your greatest weakness as well. All that body mass and all that muscle that's so great is killing you in here. So there's another profound life lesson.
Right.
The very thing you think is your thing. It's a double-edged sword, man. It cuts both ways. It can cut both ways. And finding the balance in your life where I don't have to be so extreme in one way or another. That's really what the grappling's all about, is finding that balance, right? It's not, you can't be too far. Same thing with stand-up fighting. You know, they'll talk about he got caught over his toes. Yeah, because he lurched forward, was out of balance, and the guy nailed him, and now it's a knockout punch. Are you getting out of balance in your life? Are you so far over your toes in your life because you let somebody anger you, or you let someone talk some shit on the internet and then you went off and now you regret? That's the lessons I always learned in the martial arts world. And the reason it spoke to me was I'm such a stubborn guy that you had to get me exhausted. You had to get me to a point where I couldn't even hardly think, because if I could think, I'd be trying to get my way around it somehow. So that was the whole idea of training, hour and a half warm up. Like, you ready now to learn? Are you ready now? Yeah. You can't even think.
Right.
You can't breathe.
You're exhausted.
Now, calm down, and you have to, because you can't. What else are you going to do?
Exactly.
You can't use your strength anymore because you don't have any.
Right.
Now we can train technique, you know.
Right.
And that's why I used to do that, because that's the only way I knew to reach people. Like you and me and the guys that were down there. There were tons of guys. Who was the guy, the singer? I forget his name.
I don't know his name.
Remember that
when
dude?
you fist choked him.
I fist choked him.
And he came in the next day and said, "Is that legal?
Yeah, is that legal?
I can't do this
Dude,
anymore.
I gotta be able to sing.
I got to make a living." He
I
made
gotta
a
make
living singing.
He's a singer. He's a country. I think he's a country
Yeah.
music guy or something.
Local guy. I don't
Yeah.
know if he made it anywhere.
I don't know
but,
if he did either.
But that was his excuse.
Can't do this. forget this.
You don't want to jeopardize it. Well, it's just like I wore the headgear because
Don't want your ears
I
looking.
don't want my ears looking like chewed bubble gum. My wife would make me quit. She told me, "You come home with your ears looking like that, you're done." So okay, I'll buy it. I'll buy
get
the
some
headgear.
Right. Yeah, right.
I mean,
yeah, that's a motivator right there. But how many guys do have the bubble gum ears?
Yeah.
You know what I say too about that? They don't know where their heads are sometimes.
right,
They're getting their heads twisted off, right?
right, yeah,
I thank God never got it, and I never wore headgear. But
right. Well, I always thought it took years to do it, and then I realized that I can't remember. I think it was it's not Matt.
no, it was Travis,
Travis, the one class. Phew.
and there it was.
And I was like, my eyes got really big, and I
And he
think
actually went over, I think, to Dr. Barone, and he drained it. Didn't matter because
Right.
it's scar tissue that builds up in the ear.
yeah. So I went the next day and bought the headgear because I thought it took years to do. No,
No, it can happen quick.
instantaneously.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So yeah,
All right, buddy. Well, listen, thanks for doing this for me. I want to try to get you to do a bunch more of these.
yeah.
And we'll get
I was nervous to begin with, but yeah, I'll do this again.
Okay.
We get.
I'll do it again someday, maybe.
I'm going to be retired soon, so I got more time on my hands.
Yeah, we'll just do a bunch of these.
Yeah.
My hope is that, because there's a lot more I want to talk about, not just
Right.
the martial arts is one thing, health, what's it, all kinds of topics
Right.
that I want to talk about. And I've got some other guys I'm trying to get. I'd like to have Golker on here. I'd like to get Steve, all the martial arts guys in different. But there's other people I'd like to have on too.
Right.
I mean, when we were setting all this up, Jim and I sometimes would sit around and talk for an hour or two, and he'd tell all about his world.
Right.
I had no idea. I'm like, this is freaking fascinating. You can learn something. I don't care who it is. My problem is with people who are so tribal that they feel like somebody who doesn't look like them, vote like them, think like them, they automatically want to label them as something. And they want nothing to do with them. They don't want to listen to them. They have nothing to say. And that's total bullshit because everybody's got something to offer.
Right.
And if you can keep your mind up, that's how I felt about martial arts. I never closed my mind off to the fact that I could learn something from somebody. I never thought I had all the answers and, jiu-jitsu is the
Right.
end all be all.
Right.
No. And Steve Yant used to say that to me all the time. He'd say, look, you got to be proficient in all ranges of fighting, man. Jiu-jitsu has a lot of answers. They don't have all the answers. You've got striking arts, weapons arts. Nobody has all the answers. But why would you want to shut yourself off? I seen that in the martial arts world where once these guys got indoctrinated, they thought what they were doing was the end-all, be-all, and they weren't even interested in anyone else. I just think you limit yourself as a human being.
Right.
I would have somebody on here who totally disagrees with. There's a medical doctor who has agreed to come on who can't stand chiropractors. He thinks we're the biggest quacks in the world. And I said, would you be willing to come on and have now I'm talking about a civil debate. I don't have a lot of tolerance for ad hominem attacks. You understand what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
I don't have a lot of tolerance. And your medical degree isn't going to buy you anything.
Right.
I don't give two shits about your medical degree.
Right.
If you're a decent human being, I'm willing to have a conversation.
A conversation.
Yeah, and maybe, you know what? Maybe if I listen, I might go, you know what? I think that might be, that's it. I sent Jim something the other day about Snoop Dogg, I think. I was watching it, and it got me fascinated. And what he did and how he got involved with things, later wanted to change his life around, decided differently about it. Now, I don't know if that's real, if it's put on.
Right.
I don't know anything about this man. I never met him. But it gave me an insight that I didn't have before. It's easy to just dismiss it. And that's what's happening today. Everybody's getting so tribal. Everybody's getting to their own little groups. And everybody thinks everybody else is their enemy. And I'm like, no, the guy pulling your strings is your enemy.
I used to be very intimidated by being around people that I felt were more intelligent than me, because of whatever their jobs were, their education, based on my background. I was always afraid to misspeak or mispronounce a word.
Yeah.
But then I came to some along the line, but that's me. I can't worry about what they're thinking of me if I misspeak. I'm just going to be me. And if you like me for me,
Right.
Unless I dislike you, then you never like me.
Yeah, I remember. That's the old line from the outlaw Josie Wales.
You know what I mean?
I know that's how
You know,
it
but
always
I
is.
used to be so intimidated and afraid that I would misspeak and mispronounce something that I was nervous just to go out to dinner with somebody.
Right.
And it ruins the whole evening and atmosphere until I just said, you know what, I'm going to be me. And if you like me,
Yep.
fine. If you don't, because there's a lot of people that do not like me.
That's because you're.
But they don't
misunderstood.
really know me, though.
You're misunderstood.
Yes, I always say that I'm the most
You're
misunderstood person.
misunderstood. Well, I like you. We've always gotten along really well, and you know, I don't personally give a shit what somebody's education is or what they're whatever. To me, it's all about whether or not you treat me well, and I think you're a decent person. And now you can debate what decent means.
Is
Like
this
what I
over?
think is decent might be a lot different than somebody else. Yeah. Like I don't like good people because I think sometimes they're the worst people in the world. They hide behind how good they are. You know how virtuous they are.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you really? Yeah. I'm probably going to be more at home with the bikers in the outlaw bar someplace.
Right.
Even though they're the bad people, not to me because I grew up with that stuff.
No, and they have a certain code and,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and then I look at politicians, and I'm like, you're the worst people in the world, as far as I'm concerned. Even though you're supposed to be the best and whatever, you come from money, you come from privilege, you went to school. But that also doesn't make them the enemy either. See, that's the
Right.
other thing is, you could come from privilege. What would you do if you had been born into it? I've asked people that.
Yeah.
While you're hating on these people, what would you have done?
You don't know their circumstance.
You don't know their circumstance. You don't know anything about them.
No.
You're buying into a label or buying into, you know,
Yeah.
that.
And there's a point of jealousy involved there.
Oh, for sure there is.
You know? No matter what, if you know, want to admit that or not.
Right. Well, when my dad was alive, would always say the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, but it's just as hard to mow. So that person may not have your struggles. Rest assured they have struggles.
They have their own. It's
They
a
have their
different
own.
level.
And it may be, if you knew the whole thing, you might go, I'm happy right where I'm at.
Well,
You
remember,
can have all of it.
what was it Chris Rock who said, not one of you would, I'm
Would
rich.
change-
Not one of you
want
would
to be black. Yeah.
not one of you would change places with me,
me,
and
yeah.
I'm rich.
Right, and I'm rich. You know, another thing he said that was funny was where he lives is like $10 million homes.
Yeah.
And he goes, so I'm there, and who else did he say? I forget. Like one of the top rappers.
Yeah.
And a couple, and somebody, all the black, they were all
Oh,
blacks.
yeah.
And they were like
black celebrities.
really big time,
Yeah.
right? And he goes, and then the white guy, you know what he does? He's a dentist.
He's a dentist.
That's hilarious to
Yeah.
me. That's funny to
It
me.
is, but there's a lot of truth in that.
Sure,
I'm
there's
sure.
truth. Yeah, I mean, look, but who's to say that the guy who is the dentist is a bad guy?
No,
You know what I'm
don't know
saying?
what he did to go there. He might have came from poverty and worked his way up.
You
to
don't
that.
know exactly. And would you really want to be a dentist?
No,
Suicide rate among those people is like the highest of any profession.
dentists?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I would think it'd be gynecology.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you? Yeah, you would, wouldn't you? See, now we're going into the realm of inappropriate. See, that's what Matt would say if he was here right now. Now we've entered the realm of inappropriateness. Remember? I think the next one we better do is have you and him on together. So we'll have to set that up
Yeah.
to see just how miserable he can be. But it's fun. I enjoy it. And my hope is that somebody can listen to this and maybe pick something up, man. Just something, you know. I like.
If we make them smile.
Yeah, you'd laugh a little bit.
You know?
There's always something you can pick up. What I'm finding now is there's too much. The podcasts that I've listened to, it's so much negativity, man. It's so much negativity out there, and it's going on with the news and what's going on, and you know, and it's what do you call it? Identity politics. And this guy's a conservative, so he's no good. He's a racist, and this guy's a liberal. He's a dirtbag, you know, whatever.
Too many groups.
Fighting all the time. I'm like, I wanted to do something that someone could listen to and not have all that negativity, man.
Right.
You know, not have all that. And that's the hope of it. You can listen and pick something up. Maybe something will speak to somebody.
Right.
Maybe you'll hear something. I've heard things sometimes, and I went, like, as an example, the other day I seen a short video on Danny Trejo. You know who he is. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about him and another guy got locked up. He was locked up with Charlie Manson. before Charlie Manson
Was
anybody. He goes, he was just a little pipsqueak,
right.
petty thief. And according to him, you can find this video, he said Charlie hypnotized him and the other guy into believing they had done drugs. And he said, we were certain we did it. And we both dumped. Now, I don't know shit about drugs. But according to him, when you do certain drugs, I don't know if it was heroin or whatever it was, you'll get sick initially.
Right.
And he goes, this guy's dumping in the sink, I'm dumping in the toilet. Higher than hell, no drugs. He just literally hypnotized him.
Wow.
And he said that guy was so skillful, such a manipulator, and that's why he did what he did. He goes, he never could have done it anywhere else at any other time. He found those young women and a couple of those guys, they were all broken emotionally.
Right.
And he was so good at manipulating. And I thought to myself, man, how many people are getting manipulated by the media, by the politicians, by whatever, and they don't even know it. Now, once you're convinced of it, it's like trying to convince you this never happened tonight.
Right.
We weren't here doing this. I just put the idea. You're never going to believe that.
Right.
You're going to say, no, I was there. I know what happened. I know what is going on. And my buddy, Dr. Cochran from Buffalo, him and I have been talking recently. I didn't realize he's got quite the history in hypnotism and hypnosis and all of that. And he said for people to be hypnotized, you got to have three conditions. One, you got to have an expectation. Two, you got to have a belief. And three, you got to have trust. And once you have that, people are very susceptible to it, and you can absolutely hypnotize them. They won't even. It's not like you're feeling
Watch
sleepy.
this. Yeah,
no, it's none of that. It's you can get them to believe things that you'll never get them to not believe. You can manipulate people, and he said, and he feels that's exactly what's going on in the world today. Is we're fed a certain thing, and it depends on which way you're bent, what your expectation will be. Mm-hmm. It depends on which way you're bent, on what you'll believe, and who you'll trust. But once those conditions are met, you're not even thinking your own thoughts anymore, according to him. Mm. And I thought, well, that's something.
It sounds like it's happening.
Sounds like it's happening. So
with the news and the
all
media, all the social media,
people
everything,
fighting and warring against each other.
Oh my God!
You know, and for me, I'm looking at it going, I want to put something out there that's positive, that's about awakening people, not hypnotizing you. Just sharing what you and I and what we've been through and the different principles, and we can delve not just martial arts, but we can get into all kinds of subject matters. There's all kinds of stuff, you know.
Right.
And maybe somebody who's having a shitty day, maybe they tune in and go, "Wow, you know, I got something out of that." Perfect. At least you made the effort to do something good. And the other thing, it's selfish on my part because it's fun. Yeah. I enjoy it. Right. I miss all this, and now we don't have the school. We're not down there all the time. I'm like, well, damn it, we can still have the other part.
Oh, yeah. We
can still do all this. So, well, thanks for doing it, man. Well, I want to do another one pretty quick, and we'll get Matt or Josh or somebody to come down.
Sure.
And we'll reminisce and talk. And think about stuff you want to share, too. I mean, anything that comes up. Write it down so you don't forget it.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, buddy.
Yep.